franchise-changing pieces at the top. This one does not. But the Utah Hockey Club could either utilize this to draft another good young player or maybe even expedite the growth process. And that's what happens when you are able to get luck like this. You have so many options at your disposal. And maybe Bill Armstrong uses this as a chip to bring in some veteran help, maybe on the center line. We'll see. We'll see. But it was a fun night for the fans of the Utah Hockey Club. RSL is going to be back in action coming up this weekend after losing at Vancouver. The road continues for our local soccer club. They did make an addition yesterday. It's a young transfer. I'm not sure what to expect from this young player, but we'll get to the latest with the Utah Hockey Club as well. All right, our first guest right out of the gates with the news that Britton Covey is now a member of the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to bring in JB Long today, who is their play-by-play voice and a good friend of the show that we got to know during the Pac-12 years. Yes, that was a thing, kids. Once upon a time. Google it. Look it up. Speaking of college football, Brett Yormark gets a contract extension from the Big 12, of course, as their commissioner. So I'll bring in JB Long today to talk a little Britton Covey, talk a little NFL, talk some Rams, talk some football. Tim McMahon, NBA Daily Assist. Timmy was courtside last night for OKC Denver. And there's a funny snapshot after Aaron Gordon dunked on Chet Holmgren. Tim's in the background with his jaw on the floor. So bring in Tim today. We're going to bring in our friend Spencer Litton from BYU TV, and it's going to get tense. We're going to do some rivalry radio today. I'm going to tell him to stop tampering with our Utes. I'm going to stand up for the Ute fan base. It's time. We'll do some college basketball, some college football. Spencer Litton today, our friend from BYU TV. And if you did not catch the Bill Armstrong presser where he discussed his optionality, a word that I just love, with the number 4 overall pick after winning the lottery last night, getting as high as they possibly could. We'll bring in some sound today from Bill Armstrong for our fans of the Utah Hockey Club to get ready for the NHL draft, which is just a couple of days after the NBA draft in June 25th. Don't forget our draft night coverage that night will be second to none. Richard Smith, Gordy Chiesa, alongside myself. I'll be anchoring the coverage, and then I'll just kind of throw softballs to those two great basketball minds, and they'll kind of help us understand what sort of hand we've been dealt. All right, JB Long, Tim McMahon, Spencer Litton, a little Utah Hockey Club sound to get you ready for the NHL draft. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Happy Tuesday. The sun is trying to shine. And that guy, Porter Larson, watching the New York Knicks go up to Boston at TD Garden and absolutely steal Game 1.
My goodness.
My question to you off the top is, do you think they can win the series?
I caught myself believing last night, Spence. Now, as a Knicks fan who, as you know, didn't really experience the 90s, really, much less the 70s, it's hard for me to believe what I saw last night. And it's always hard for me to believe it's going to happen more and more. But I do remember, not so long ago, maybe a decade now, a series in which we held a very good not defending champs, but recent champion Celtics squad to under like 80 points in every game. And the identity of that Knicks team just kind of matched up well with the Celtics, even though the on-floor, like the player matchups, didn't really seem like it was going to play in their favor. I get similar feelings, and I think that this is a team that can win the series. And the other one, man, the Nuggets, here's the deal. You always say it. Who has the best player in the series? And I think Denver might still have the best player, even though I think Shea is the MVP. Both of those losses last night happened in a way where you never want to look into Game 1 too much. But, man, let's look into Game 1 too much.
We will look into Game 1 too much. Well said. JB Long will be our first guest on a Tuesday. We'll do some football with JB. But before he hops on, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. Download that Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and you will get $50 right away when you make that first $5 bet. It's on the house. You do not even have to win your bet. Just download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. You get $50 as soon as you place that first $5 bet. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, I'm going more on Tyrese Halliburton. Points, rebounds, assists tonight, combined 33. I'm going more on 5 assists for Anthony Edwards. I'm going to go less on Stephen Curry, 26.5 points. And I'm going to go less on Ty Jerome, 28.5 fantasy score, because I think Darius Garland's going to play for entertainment purposes only. Those are my picks tonight. You guys can follow along and play if you'd like. All right. Unbelievable night of NBA playoff basketball. And we'll start up in Boston, where the New York Knicks went to TD Garden and stole Game 1 from the Boston Celtics. And let me say this. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the goobs who cover NBA. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the nerds who cover NBA basketball. Kevin Pelton, my guy, Andy Larson, good friend of the show. Smart people that have helped a lot of people understand how new numbers are equated to successful roster construction and are also, necessary in order to understand rotations and offensive spacing and how you do want to hunt threes and layups and dunks and why the corner three is a weapon. Like a lot of things about the rise of analytics in the game of basketball are positive. Last night was an L for the goobs who cover basketball with calculators. It just was. The Boston Celtics went a historic 15 of 60 from three. They shot 60 3-pointers. Okay, in the third quarter, Boston shot 20 shots. 19 of them were threes. The wildest stat to me is after Boston went up 20 in the third, and I'll be honest, when they were up 20 in the third, I'm like, no chance, no shot that the Knicks are even going to make this a game. And I started thinking, all right, this is probably a sweep. I still think Boston wins the series. We'll get to that later on. But after Boston went up 20 in the third, their next 10 possessions, they shot 10 3-point shots. On 9 of those possessions, the ball didn't even break the plane of the 3-point line. Okay, you're up 20 at home, and you jack up 10 threes, and the ball doesn't even break the paint. Ball doesn't even break the 3-point line. Like, that is an analytical L, no matter how you spit it. Now, here's the thing. Boston's 5-out, 3-point reliant system has made them generationally special, okay? So, to me, this was a moment in time and not exactly who they are. They won the championship last year. I picked them to win it this year. I'm not off of that. I think they're the best team in pro basketball. They lose Kristaps Porzingis to an illness that forced them to play Al Horford, who's still very good, yet very old, 34 minutes, and Luke Kornet 17 minutes. And what the Knicks did is they forced Horford and Kornet into switches. They tried to force Horford and Kornet into switches on Jalen, because the problem is with Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, with those 4 perimeter players, no matter what action offensively you choose to implement to try to get a better matchup on Jalen, there's not a good option out of those 4. Because Drew Holiday continues to be one of the best perimeter defenders in pro basketball. Derek White has always been underrated, in my opinion, back when the Jazz were trying to find some defensive help on the perimeter when it was the Mitchell, Gobert, Quinn Snyder era. I badly wanted them to look at Derek White because he was available. He landed in Boston, and he is a tremendous defensive player and also an offensive weapon, even though he missed 11 threes last night. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are just 6 and 7 inches taller than Jalen Brunson. It's tough for Jalen to get good looks if those are the defenders. But because of the Porzingis injury and because of Joe Mazzulla going with Al Horford and Luke Kornet, there were plenty of options for the Knicks to get into action, to force switches on a lesser defender for Jalen to feast upon, which he did again. And Jalen Brunson is starting to evolve into this offensive player where it almost doesn't matter who the other team has to guard him. He's just that good, and he's figured it out in a way that I don't think I ever thought he would be able to. Because we do this all the time with some of the great offensive players. It's like, oh, well, the other team has these great offensive wings. I heard it with Jordan all the time. Well, the Blazers have Clyde Drexler. All right, Clyde Drexler's a good player. Once Jordan figured it out, once LeBron's intellect matched his physical gifts and his basketball skill set, there was not a good option to defend him. Yes, the other team might have Kawhi, or the other team might have Paul George, or the other team might have Clyde Drexler, or the other team might have John Starks. For the greats, it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying Jalen Brunson is LeBron James or Michael Jordan. But for all the conversation about Boston's ability to turn his water off, Jalen did last night what he's done all year, had 29 points, had a great fourth quarter, and dominated the action down the stretch. Now, what the Knicks have done to try to match up with the Celtics is they decided to move off R.J. Barrett, and they bring in OG Anunoby from Toronto. And then they sacrifice all their draft capital to bring in Mikal Bridges from Brooklyn. And, of course, Josh Hart, a guy that never gets enough credit for his energy on the wing. Those three wings are able to at least make it difficult on Brown and Tatum, which was the idea. Tatum went 0 of 7 in the fourth quarter. Jalen was really good, but after a while, the physicality of OG and Mikal and Josh Hart kind of wore on him, and Bridges rips the ball out of his hands in overtime before he even had a chance to get the shot off. So the Knicks go up to Boston. They steal game one. No part of me believes that that's sustainable. And as a Knicks fan, I hope that they can at least extend the series because I'd like to see some intense playoff basketball at Madison Square Garden. But Boston will not miss 45 threes again. They just won't. And ultimately, I don't think the Knicks played all that well, but that was a make-or-miss game. And I think the Boston Celtics probably look at tape, and we're up 20, and we go 10 possessions where we just force threes. Like, what are we doing? All right, over to the other game. Again, analytics ruining the day for Oklahoma City. Now, Mark Daigneault is a numbers-driven coach. He was the coach of the year last year. He's one of the bright young coaches we have in the league. And I am a little bit less inclined to anoint OKC in this series like I am more inclined to do with Boston against the Knicks, simply because of what we saw last night. And this is going to sound very cliche, but it was championship mettle, attitude, and effort for 48 minutes by the Denver Nuggets, because Oklahoma City had them on the ropes over and over and over. They just could not land that last uppercut. And look, I'm a proponent of fouling when you're up 3, not with 12 seconds left, though. Like, wait till there's maybe 4 or 5 seconds left. Up 3, okay. That way you take a foul, all right? And there simply is just not enough time left to play this possession game and this free throw game. But for all the pressure that Mark Daigneault decided to put on Denver to force them to make free throws and then play the free throw game, here's your problem. And one of the reasons I've been a little bit skeptical, just to simply anoint Oklahoma City, the Boston Celtics are coming off a season where they've won a championship. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have played in 5 conference finals. Oklahoma City does not have this lengthy playoff history to lean on as far as experience goes. And this is a rite of passage league. It always has been. Go look back at any instance. It's why we talk about John Stockton, Karl Malone, not making the NBA Finals until they were in their 30s, mid-30s, right? It's like what Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck decided to do to break down the Mitchell and Gobert group. Can you imagine if Scott Layden decided to trade John Stockton and Karl Malone after the Warriors swept them in 89? Just dump them in their 20s because you don't think you can get it done. We never would have seen the great run that almost led to a championship. It takes time, and it takes lessons. And the Denver Nuggets won a championship just a couple of years ago. And the Denver Nuggets have a group that have been together through playoff runs. They know how to go on the road and win. They're not threatened or scared by the crowd. And they just stayed the course. And the pressure that Mark Daigneault put on the Denver Nuggets to make free throws, he equally put that pressure on his young group to make their free throws. And what happened? The young player, without a ton of playoff experience, blinked, missed 2 free throws. OKC does not get back in transition. Christian Brown does a good job of advancing the ball to Russell Westbrook, who takes a couple of power dribbles into the middle and then makes the right basketball play out to Aaron Gordon. It was a late closeout, wing 3, boom, game over. It was a soul-stealing win by the Denver Nuggets, and Aaron Gordon gets his 2nd game winner of this playoffs. But this is about one dude. It's about one dude only. And I marvel whenever I sit and lock in on Nikola Jokic, who went for 42 points, 22 rebounds, 6 assists. That's Wilt Chamberlain. That's Shaq. That's Giannis. And that's the list. And if I'm Oklahoma City, I'm a little bit nervous about how that game went down last night. Like I said, no part of me believes Boston is in trouble. Part of me believes Oklahoma City has something to worry about now. All right, we'll catch a quick break and we'll change gears. We'll do some football with JB Long coming up on the other side. Get back to some NBA playoffs. Tim McMahon from ESPN is going to join us coming up in a bit. We have our friend Spencer Linton from BYU TV. We do have some sound from Bill Armstrong as the Utah Hockey Club won the lottery, well, as much as they could have. They moved up 10 spots, so they'll draft number 4 in the NHL draft. But some fun news broke yesterday as Britton Covey has been signed by the Los Angeles Rams. Of course, they already have Puka Nacua, our next guest, friend of the show, from our Pac-12 days. Oh, goodness, JB Long. Do you remember those Pac-12 days? Happy Tuesday, buddy. How we doing?
I remember them fondly. Happy Tuesday to you. And, yeah, the Los Angeles Rams bid to be the official NFL team of the greater Salt Lake area continues with Britton Covey.
You already have one of our favorite sons with Puka, and now you add another. So, look, I'm sure you already know this. You're getting the highest of high-quality guys. He was undrafted and got a Super Bowl ring in Philly. I'm wondering what sort of role you foresee Britton playing for what I perceive to be a really good landing spot for him in L.A.
Yeah, the Rams were one of the most improved special teams units year over year last season, which they had to be because they couldn't have been much worse in 2023. And I think this year is very much about incremental progress. I think they've pinned down who their place kicker is, who their punter is. But I think return game and kick coverage are all still very much roster spots that are up for grabs. And so you're dealing with kind of roster spots 47, 48, and beyond. And I think Covey is someone they got to see up close head-to-head against the Eagles. And when it became known that he was available, might be one of those incremental upgrades. And who knows, there could be like a wide receiver 6 spot available to him as well if he does make the team in that regard.
Is it odd to picture life without Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, it is. But I'm trying to take like a glass half full approach. Like I had the privilege of calling every snap of Cooper's NFL career to this juncture. And he was old by his peer standards when he entered the league. And he was old by his peer standards when he won the Triple Crown and Super Bowl MVP. And he's unfortunately on the wrong side of 30 in a young man's game where more and more waves of, I think, top-tier receivers are coming into the league. And so it made sense, I think, to go in a different direction. At this point, his usage rate had dropped considerably in the second half of last season and especially down the stretch and into the playoffs. And had that continued, had that reality spun forward into this season, I think it could have had the potential to be awkward, and not that it would have tainted his legacy in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's best for both sides that his future as a Ram is preserved with a year, maybe more in Seattle, and whatever he's got left to prove, he gets to do it in an area that's, familiar and close to home, and I'll certainly be rooting for him, 15 times per year?
Certainly. And, you had Devontae Adams, who, when healthy and engaged, is as talented and certainly aging as well. But what do you foresee with, of course, as we already referenced, Puka Nacua, year 3 next to Devontae Adams?
Yeah, I think that rightly or wrongly, it was believed that Cooper Kupp was no longer changing math in the passing game. He was still doing everything right. He was still making great catches. He was still inserting in the running game the way that we've come to know and love. But I think the Rams offensively, especially in the passing game, had become Puka Nacua and then replacement value around the rest of the formation. And so year over year, to bring a future Hall of Famer in who, despite a whole lot of quarterback uncertainty last season, still put up numbers, is a worthwhile dart throw. I think Matthew Stafford has been a kingmaker at quarterback throughout his career, be it with Megatron or with Cooper Kupp or with Puka Nacua. And so whatever is left of Devontae Adams' career, or maybe even prime, I think Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are the perfect tandem to maximize it. California and Los Angeles familiar to him as well. So he's comfortable, and I think at this stage of the career, he knows what he's playing for, right, which is like legacy cementing wins and moments. And that's kind of where the Rams are as a team, and especially as an offense in their organizational growth curve, too. So that's a match.
Les Snead, as well as Sean McVay, always seem to be up to something on draft night, and they've kind of become the NFL equivalent of the San Antonio Spurs, where the Spurs will just draft like an international dude in the second round. You'd be like, well, he's probably awesome. So you probably just assume that they're doing the right thing. 6 picks overall. What'd you like about what the Rams did during the draft process?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming away with a future number 1 pick by way of Atlanta was a surprise, an extremely pleasant one that could have all sorts of, amplified benefits in the next 350 something days. They were at the tail end of the first round by moving back 20 spots from 26 to 46. They essentially bought themselves Atlanta's first round pick next season, next spring. And who knows? Like, the Falcons could very well win the South. The Falcons could very well, enter a tailspin, and that could be a top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick if you're being super optimistic. So it's always tough to accept delayed gratification for an event like the draft, which only happens once per year. But, Spence, you know this well, think of all the different ways that the Rams might be able to utilize 2 first-round picks. Before they even kick off week 1, who knows if there's a veteran at a position of need and a team willing to deal at the end of training camp. Come the trade deadline, what if a team is out of it and is looking to part ways with a potential free agent to be, and you might get someone of, Jalen Ramsey or OBJ or Dante Fowler or Von Miller's caliber. These are all players that the Rams have acquired at that point in the calendar in years past. To have a first-round pick to play with, extremely valuable. And if things go great and you don't need it, wonderful. Maybe you come away with another championship. If things go sideways for the Rams, well, you're entering year 37 with Matthew Stafford, and there's got to be life at quarterback beyond him. You could be teed up, even coming off a disappointing season, with 2 first-round picks to package and move up and get your next quarterback of the future.
From the outside looking in, there was some conversation about whether or not Stafford would be back, right? Was that ever a real thing, or were they always going to ride with him for at least another year?
No, I think he's been year to year ever since getting injured in 22 after the Super Bowl season. I mean, from that point forward, I think I've always kind of put the headset on with the very real possibility that I'm calling Matthew Stafford's last game. Now, I don't want to think about those possibilities, and I don't think McVay and the Rams wanted to step into the next chapter of Rams football without what I think is still one of the top 10 quarterbacks walking the planet. But I think it was good for both sides to kind of look over the edge into the abyss and decide what made sense for them moving forward. I think they're actually in a better place, maybe even than they were throughout last season, having gone through that exercise. And I think it's entirely reasonable that neither one of those first-round picks next year that we just talked about are used on a quarterback. I think it's entirely possible that Matthew Stafford plays to closer to 40, and he's got another 2, maybe even 3 years left in the tank, so long as he stays upright and the Rams stay winning, and they can use that draft capital to keep him in the chase.
Wait from the Rams for a minute. Just wanted to get your perspective, because I always find it really fascinating, the chasm that exists between NFL talent evaluators and guys that evaluate talent, or people that evaluate talent in the media, and the gap that exists between the two. And, NFL talent evaluators or NBA, if you work in the pros, you're taught to remove emotion from the process, and let's just analyze whether or not somebody impacts winning. And oftentimes, certainly in today's day and age of media, where content creation and engagement is king, you wonder, are you analyzing talent to make it a better story, or do you really believe the kid can play? And I'm not a scout, but I didn't think Shedeur Sanders would drop to the 5th round. How did you digest that slide and the whole storyline? And can we be as reductive as just saying NFL talent evaluators did not evaluate him the way that the media did?
I think that's part of it, but I also think he was subject to a perfect storm. He played his leading role in what transpired. Don't get me wrong. But I think because of that imbalance that you just described, there was a very real free fall to be had. And I wasn't surprised that it went into day 2, maybe day 3, certainly. But I would guess, if you were really able to see transparently, Spence, there were a whole bunch of teams, like a wide swath of NFL teams, that didn't spend 1 second on Shedeur Sanders during this offseason process. Maybe that's because they weren't interested. More likely, I think it's because they didn't figure he would be available to them. Like, if you had a if you had a draft pick in the back half of the first round, or if you weren't really interested in this year's quarterback class, why would you devote bandwidth to doing a deep dive on whether or not he had the right ingredients to be in your quarterback room, much less your starter? And so when you take half the teams, let's just call it in the National Football League, out of play for him, and then the others either get the quarterback that they wanted or had gone through the process and realized that he was not worth all the ancillary things that would come with making him a backup or bringing him in to compete with your room, there were very few teams even competing against each other. And I think that's why you saw what transpired. And look, I think it's entirely possible that he gets opportunities this year. I think it's also possible that the consensus that we found out, a couple weekends ago is that he's just not an NFL quarterback, and that very few in this class maybe even are.
Were you surprised to see the meteoric rise of a former Pac-12 quarterback in Cam Ward, where it's felt like, JB, for a long, long time, there was a legitimate debate about, well, A, whether or not you even want to take a quarterback in this class, and then B, whether or not you want to take either Cam or Shador or whoever. Were you surprised to see what a consensus that Cam Ward became that actually became the reality for Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I called his first Washington State Pac-12 game. I love the narrative of him coming from Incarnate Word, and I understand why he had gone under-recruited and what upside there was. But watching him that night and throughout his Washington State career, I'm not sure that I ever saw an NFL quarterback, much less the number one overall pick. Clearly what he did last year at Miami changed a lot of those perceptions, and I'll be the first to admit I don't know what I'm looking at when it comes to evaluating NFL quarterbacks either. I kind of see it happening with Fernando Mendoza now, who similarly had a long path to Cal, and I think I called his first start there in Berkeley, and now he's really highly regarded going into next year. So circumstances matter. Great quarterbacks can elevate their circumstances. All quarterbacks benefit from positive circumstances, and I think that's what you saw with Cam Ward. He's on the Rams schedule. We travel to Nashville next year, so I'm looking forward to seeing him again in person. But look, I think it's a good case study, especially in the transfer portal era for quarterbacks looking for opportunity. If you can prove it at the Washington State Pac-12 level, if you can prove it at the Miami ACC level, then there's every reason to believe that you might ascend to one of these really coveted positions in the draft.
Stick with the quarterback position and stick in your division, and a former Pac-12 player. And happy for Sam Darnold. As a Jets fan, I actually thought we had finally drafted the solution. And maybe we did, but we're just so horrible at everything else. Sam never really had a chance to show he was. Of course, a great year last year. Minnesota is going to go JJ, and so he lands in your division with Seattle. And, of course, as we already talked about, they have Cooper Flagg. What are you expecting as you guys are going to battle the Seahawks with Sam Darnold under center?
I mean, talk about circumstances mattering for a quarterback, right? Did not look the part of a first-round pick in New York, did not look the part of a first-round pick in Carolina. Goes to San Francisco, experiences a better ecosystem, a more quarterback-centric offense, puts up some good tape, and then blossoms in another Shanahan tree system in Minnesota last year, and was not just a Pro Bowler, but I think a very viable MVP candidate for a good part of last year. So I continually had to remind myself that, Sam, I think last year was still in his age 27 season. Don't quote me on that, but thereabouts. And so I think he's got great football left ahead of him. I don't know that Seattle is necessarily the long-term best place for him to be. I think Seattle made a lot of understandable decisions, but not ones that necessarily made their 25 team better at quarterback and at receiver specifically. But yeah, Sam Darnold I've always found easy to root for, and I think he would be a really interesting quarterback to bring Seattle to SoFi Stadium in Week 1. That's kind of the SoFi opener that I want for the Rams, because they just knocked Sam Darnold out of the playoffs last year as a quarterback of the Vikings, and it would also mean that Cooper Kupp return to SoFi Stadium is kind of locked in early in the season when he's hopefully healthy, and we can all appreciate that for what it is.
Feels like, and Vegas tells us that the Rams are the favorite in the NFC West. I wonder, San Francisco has a lot of questions to answer. Of course, they're going to have to pay their quarterback. And as the way this league works, when you have a young quarterback, you don't have to pay. You can surround him with other pieces. See Russell Wilson in Seattle, then you have to pay the quarterback. You have to let some of those other pieces go. But who's the team, maybe it is Seattle, that you think is keeping Sean McVay up as far as your NFC West counterpoints?
Yeah, I think all four teams are playing for a division championship and a spot in the playoffs. I think Arizona is on the come. Like I thought they would be much improved last year. Maybe I was a year early on them, but I think Arizona continues to make really sound decisions. And they played the Rams toe-to-toe twice last year, blew them out once, and had them dead to rights at SoFi Stadium as well. I think people fading San Francisco are suffering from recency bias. I think there's too much championship pedigree there. I think they're too well coached, especially getting Robert Saleh back as their defensive coordinator. I think their draft is underappreciated. And here's the most important thing, is they play a fourth place schedule, and that matters. With your three like place finisher opponents, like compare them head to head with Los Angeles, whereas the Rams have to play the Ravens, have to host the Lions, have to go to Philadelphia. Conversely, the 49ers, who finished last in that division, they get Cleveland, they get Chicago, they get the Giants, I believe. Like, that's got to be worth a game and a half in the standings by year's end, no matter how the year goes for them competitively. So I think that's why, yeah, some people are picking Los Angeles as the favorite in that division. But if you look at the Vegas odds, I'm pretty sure the Niners are still right there because of that fourth place schedule.
JB, before I set you loose, simple question, expectations for the Rams this year, and how do they live up to those expectations? Where are the concerns? What I read when I saw you on the rundown earlier is that a lot of people think that maybe some additions at cornerback necessary prior to the start of the season, but I don't know. That's your expertise. So what are you expecting? What are you hoping? And how do the Rams live up to those expectations this year?
Yeah, the cornerback thing is interesting because they've got aged veterans in those positions, and they didn't address them at all in the draft. There's still a possibility that Jalen Ramsey comes back to Los Angeles, and I think we could be having a much different conversation by training camp with respect to that position. But look, when you sign up for more Matthew Stafford, when you make a move to recruit Devontae Adams, you're signaling to anyone who will listen that you're using a crowbar and you're jumping on it with both feet to kind of keep this window of contention open. I'm not naive enough to think that the Rams were one play away from winning a Super Bowl last year. I get that they played the Eagles more competitively than any other team in the NFC playoffs or even in the Super Bowl, but that does not mean that the Rams necessarily would have won the NFC Championship game at home nor played Mahomes in Kansas City the way that Philadelphia did. Progress in the league is not linear. It's the opposite of that, in fact. But so long as Matthews at the switch and Sean McVay's wearing the headset and this young and upcoming defense is puncturing pockets, yeah, I think they have every reason to have championship expectations. That starts with winning the West. And once they get in the field, I think we saw last year and we've seen throughout McVay's tenure, they're going to be a tough out, and they're not going to be a team that any opponent is going to be happy to see in the playoffs.
You're going to love Britt. He's the best guy. So hopefully he can find a role and stick. And, of course, with Puka there, we'll have one eye on the Rams all year long. JB, thanks so much for the time. It's always good to spend the Tuesday with you. Be good, okay?
I doubt his tenure in Los Angeles will be as long as his one in Salt Lake City, but that's what I'm going to root for.
Fair enough. The great JB Long, voice. Thank you, sir. The voice of the LA Rams, longtime voice on the Pac-12 network. That's how we got to know JB. Calling a lot of Pac-12 football and basketball. He's on social media. If you are a Rams fan, a football fan, at @JB_Long is where you find him. And Porter, I think I shared this with you. I was up at the Forever 22 game, the spring game. Ran into Zach, who we had on the show. Of course, Britt was up there as well. And he may have tipped me off that he was leaning towards the Rams. And look, this business is so cutthroat. It almost doesn't matter who you are unless you have a massive guarantee. They can walk into practice one day and just say, hey, you're done. You don't play for us anymore. But as far as all the landing spots, this felt like a really good match for Britt. As far as what that coaching staff is, the need that JB talked about in the return game, and maybe even a chance to play a little wide out.
Yeah, I think JB hit the nail on the head there. Discussing, again, the special teams probably more so than the wide receiver, but it's a less crowded wide receiver room than it oftentimes was in Philadelphia. So you're hoping to see Britt get an opportunity on the offensive side, but I think that his main assignment is probably going to be in the punt return, not kick return, but punt return game for the LA Rams, and that's a place where they have been kind of steadily improving on the special teams side. So good spot for Britt. I hope to see more of him out on the field. That has both to do with scheme stuff and his health. And I think that hopefully Los Angeles can bring that. JB and you talked about it. It's all about fit in the NFL. I think things went really well for him with Philly, but there was a contractual mechanism that Philly was able to use where you guys saw it throughout the year. Britton Covey cut, Britton Covey signed, Britton Covey cut, Britton Covey signed. That wasn't as much of a roller coaster as it may have seemed when you saw those ESPN alerts. That was part of the plan, but you can only do that for so long on a guy's rookie contract. So they can't do that anymore. That would be an extra roster spot for a guy that they've been using that for. So happy for Britt, and we'll see how it plays out.
Does not have a Super Bowl ring yet. He said he's going to get it coming up this year. So if nothing else, our guy goes to Philly, has a nice little run, makes a little cash, and comes away with a Super Bowl ring.
I was going to say they got to size it down a little bit. They never made a Britton Covey sized Super Bowl ring, I fear.
Wait, was that the deal for real?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that would
Maybe
be horrible.
Though.
Yeah, you got to get those fit. You got to get those fit, or else you're not going to get your ring. But my guess is he'll get it when he goes back there, maybe with the Rams, potentially.
Possibly. I don't think they really do it quite like the NBA where it's like opening night the next year or anything, but I'm not entirely sure.
If you got a Super Bowl ring, would you hold on to it or would you hawk it for like $500K?
It'd be around my neck for the rest of my life.
Around your neck?
I'm not a ring, like a jewelry guy on my hands. It'd be around my neck, and you'd see it all the time.
And nobody would blame you for it.
No.
That's something that you want to like untuck the chain.
And if they did, I would put it on my middle finger, and then there you go.
Fair enough. So congratulations to Britton Covey. He joins Puka Nacua with the LA Rams. Appreciate JB Long's time on this Tuesday afternoon. All right, we got 1 hour down. We got 3 hours to go. Coming up on the other side, we'll switch gears. We'll go back to some NBA playoffs and do some Jazz offseason with our guy, Tim McMahon. What a night of NBA playoff action last night. Hoping for the same tonight. 2 hours away from Indiana and Cleveland. Then the late night game is Golden State, Minnesota. Our next guest, you know him, you love him. He's very popular. He's very famous. His star has blown up this year. Celebrity reporter himself, Tim McMahon, on a Tuesday. Timmy, happy Tuesday. How are you?
Howdy, partner. I think you might be exaggerating a little bit. I'm walking through the streets of Oklahoma City right now, and I've yet to be stopped for selfie or autograph requests.
Well, then they don't know who's walking down their streets because, ultimately you were featured prominently on television last night. Did anybody send you Did anybody send you a screenshot of your reaction to Aaron Gordon's dunk?
Yeah, and you know what that actually reminds me of? You remember the Donovan Mitchell putback in a playoff game in Houston?
Yep.
Where he followed he missed like a little, I don't remember if it was a floater or a short little jumper, but he followed it up with like a 1-2 and just jumped and like soared through the crowd and slammed that thing home. And it was the same type of deal where, those type of plays, you're going to get 6 or 7 replays. And the last replay, I just happened to be in the background of it, and I had a similar face. At least on this one, I kept my hands down because on the Donovan Mitchell play, I had a similar face, but I covered the top of my head with my 2 hands. So not my first rodeo in terms of a visual appreciation of the acrobatic arts in the NBA playoffs.
No, I remember that, and I had 3 friends last night within 5 minutes text me the picture of you with your jaw on the floor after Aaron Gordon dunked on Chet. So I thought that was kind of fun. Tim. Fun night last night. But before we get there actually is some news about our local basketball team that was surprising to say the least. Will Hardy had already had 2 options picked up, so he had 2 more years left on his contract. Well, now he has 7 with an extra 5 as he has signed an extension through the 2031 season. Your thoughts on news that kind of caught some people off guard out this way?
Yeah, I certainly was aware that this was something that had been discussed, and that was something that was a possibility. I didn't realize it was as close to the finish line as obviously it was. But look, man, it is a strong, firm, concrete commitment to Will Hardy that obviously, and really what this is a message from not just Justin Zanuck and Danny Ainge, but most importantly, Ryan Smith. Their belief and their confidence and their commitment to Will Hardy has not wavered one bit despite the record. And we all understand, anybody who knows basketball, knows the NBA, understands the record this year is not a reflection of Will Hardy's coaching ability, of his acumen, of his potential in that role. And this obviously very strongly backs it up. And look, Danny Ainge has made these kind of long-term commitments, during rebuilds before. He made it to Brad Stevens. That obviously worked out extraordinarily well for the Boston Celtics. And this is a similar type of situation where they are very adamant that they have found their long-term head coach, and I think reasonably so. I think that, Will, honestly, has been too good for the Jazz for what they were trying to accomplish, certainly early on. And I don't mean too good for the franchise, but too good for, they were winning too much early on in his tenure. And then that was in large part because he was, taking a collection of kind of misfit toys and turning it into, a puzzle that fit and was productive. And so, they backed that up with a contract. I don't know what the numbers are, but obviously the numbers were high enough for Will to be comfortable, Will to be appreciative of the commitment they made, and for him to reciprocate that.
So since you referenced that you had some knowledge that these talks were going on, can you illuminate us on how it all came to be, what the motivation was? When Greg Popovich unfortunately had his stroke and a lot of people wondered what was the future in San Antonio, I heard some people bring Will's name up, but of course, under contract here. Ironically enough, Tim, a few years back, you on our show talked about, when I said, do you think Quinn is going to stick around after this whole iteration? You said, well, if Pop goes, Quinn might slide in there. Of course, he lands in Atlanta. Can you help us understand how this process came to be and what the motivation was for both sides to get this done?
Again, I think I just mentioned the motivation, and that's Will's a heck of a coach, and Will believes there's a mutual belief. The front office and the ownership and Will, and vice versa. Will's belief that Jay-Z and Danny Ainge, with the support of Ryan Smith, are going to be able to build a roster there in Utah that's going to give him a chance to be competitive. Look, it's not going to be right away. Regardless of the results of the lottery, it's not going to be right away. It's going to be a process. But, it is – they've got a group that believes in each other, and they're all on board. They're all aligned. And that's important. That, I think, gives them a real chance. As far as exactly how the process, I can't really tell you that because I don't have that information strong enough. You're right, though, about the Spurs in the sense of, Will's name had absolutely come up with that. And that's where the timing is a little bit interesting, that this happened after the Spurs. So it's not like, this isn't a situation where Will had the leverage of, hey, the San Antonio job's open, because they had filled it. They had committed to Mitch Johnson. So that part of things is interesting, and I don't have like a solid answer for you on that. I just know that I think Will Hardy has proven that he is an extremely capable head coach, and I don't blame the Jazz one bit for wanting to get him locked up long term.
What is one more thing here, then we'll get on to teams that are actually still playing basketball. But what's the reputation of Will around the league? We had Jeff Van Gundy on right after they hired Will, and before Jeff took the Boston job. Unfortunately, he can't join us anymore. He's an assistant with the Clippers. But Jeff coached with Will for Team USA, so he offered some good kind of color and context. But league-wide, the reputation of Will Hardy, Tim, what does that sound like?
The reputation of Will is that he's one of the great young coaches in the NBA. And, again, you saw the last two seasons, not this year, but the previous 2 years of Jazz basketball, where they were way more competitive than looking at their roster they should have been. Competitive to the point that it was counterproductive. That's because Will Hardy can coach. And he climbed from the very bottom of the ladder in San Antonio to the front of the bench. And he's on that top three. He's a proud member of the Popovich coaching tree. Ime Udoka will tell you that Will Hardy was awesome in his role as the lead assistant during the year in Boston when they were together. They went to the NBA Finals. And then, obviously at some point, the hope is Will's going to have the opportunity to prove how good of a coach he can be, and with a roster that has a real chance to compete and be more than something like, oh, gee whiz, they're coaching their 500 team. That's not where they need to be. But put together a roster where he has a chance to be playing at this time of year. And for me to make some nice spring visits to Salt Lake City.
Since we were mentioning Popovich, I did want to get your take on the situation since we heard from Coach Pop for the first time since November of 24. And I don't mean this to sound, and maybe this is a me problem. It just kind of made me sad, watching him, listening to him look a different way, sound a different way. And I kind of missed his snarkiness. I kind of missed his direct approach. And, talk about a job well done. The Baxter Holmes piece for you guys at ESPN.com today I thought was really, really good. And you're somebody that has covered him for a number of years, and I'm sure been able to get to know him on a level that maybe most media members have not. As Greg Popovich walks away, Tim, what's your take on the legacy that he has left, even though he's still with the organization?
Well, look, first, it was great to see Pop on his feet.
Sure.
And I know it wasn't like he's obviously got a ways to go physically, and he's still very much recovering, and that's the reason that he's not going to be coaching anymore. But it was great to see him on his feet. It was great to see, glimpses of that sense of humor. I mean, the moment where they take the jacket off and it says El Jefe, come on.
Yeah.
And so, he's still Pop. He's just not physically able to continue coaching. But his legacy, look, yes, he's the all-time winners coach. Yes, there's 5 championships. Yes, he has this unbelievable coaching tree. But his legacy is, I think, evidenced by the fact that who's sitting right there by his side as he's doing this, who's been by his side as he's been working to come back from the stroke as he's been going through all these workouts. It's Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili, and they don't have to be. They're not there for PR purposes or because they think it looks good. They're there because the way this guy builds relationships. He has that kind of a coaching tree because of the way that he builds relationships, because of the way that, he provides opportunities and empowers the people that work for him. And, Mitch Johnson is he won't be the last, but he's the latest that'll be on that Pop coaching tree. And, I have no doubt. I don't know how much Pop's going to be able to physically be around the team. I don't know that he'll be traveling much, if at all, or any of those kind of things, but I have no doubt that he's going to be an unbelievable resource for a young head coach.
For sure. All right. Since you and I last spoke, a couple of series have ended, and I want to get your take on some teams that are no longer playing. But I'll ask the question about Golden State Houston this way. What impressed you most about the way the Warriors went down to Houston and got that win? And what did Houston say to you taking that team to 7 games?
I mean, what impressed me most, yes, Buddy Hield had an unbelievable performance and like the best performance of his life at a great time. But it was a reminder, hey, this team's got a couple 4-time champions. This team has another no-brainer future Hall of Famer, Jimmy Butler, who's been through a bunch of playoff battles. And, their future Hall of Famers basically showed up. And we're like, okay, you pushed us to the brink, but we're here, and we're going to continue to haunt the Rockets fans' nightmares for a long, long time, as they've done for the last decade. And then, look, honestly, this series for the Rockets, this is about what I expected. I think I picked Warriors in 6, but I thought this would be a tough series. I thought that the Rockets would make it hard on the Warriors, and I thought the Rockets just wouldn't be able to generate enough offense to beat a good team 4 times out of 7, and that's exactly what happened. And Amin Thompson is going to be a star. I don't know if he can be your number 1 offensive option. I don't think Jalen Green can be. He's a sometime star. He had 1 good game and 6 duds. That's tough. It's tough to rely on that. Sengun, I like as my comparison for him is Sabonis. If he's your best player, I don't think you're going to be able to make deep runs. They need a star, and their hope is that it's going to be homegrown. I think the reality is they're going to need to put some of those assets to use and take a swing in the trade market to really be able to elevate to real deal contender status. I mean, they're good. They were an underdog as a 2 seed, but they were a 2 seed. They won 50-plus games. They pushed the Warriors to 7 games. They're really good. They're not good enough to be a real title threat unless they get that offensive engine, and they've got plenty of assets to be able to do it. It's a matter of them finding one who they feel like makes sense, and what they don't want to do is scrunch their window because they feel like they can have a really long runway by modern NBA standards. But it's going to be an interesting summer in Houston.
They're good and they're a pain in the ass, Tim. Like, nobody wants to play them. Do you think there's any truth to the Durant stuff that's floating out there?
Oh, there's 100% truth to it. Honestly, it comes down to what I just talked about do you want to scrunch your window? And so I know for certain, like I'm not speculating, I'm not guessing, I know for certain the Rockets will have internal discussions about Kevin Durant. And those discussions are 2 things. What are you willing to give up to get him? And then what are you willing to pay him on an extension? And then, my buddy Wendy, he comes up with these things, these little catchphrases. He calls it the KD triangle. You got to have those 2 things, and then you got to make a deal that the other team's willing to take. And then the other part is KD has to want to go play for your team. I'm certain that KD would be happy to go to Houston. He's got a lot of respect for Ime Udoka, and, KD knows basketball. He sees that team. He sees himself, as the missing piece. I don't know that the Rockets are going to be willing to give up. I don't think they're giving a bonanza package. I'll say that. The Suns sure ain't getting all 3 of their picks back. I can promise you that. Which young players? Don't ask about Amin Thompson. So I don't know. I wouldn't bet on that deal happening, but it is definitely within the realm of possibility, and it is definitely going to be a real discussion, at least internally, for Houston. Then we'll see how aggressively they actually engage the Suns, if at all.
I can't entirely describe why, but for some reason, when I watch Rudy, I feel like I'm watching my little brother, and I'm just cheering for him. And since you and I last spoke, Tim, our guy goes for 27 and 24, and the Minnesota Timberwolves eliminate the LA Lakers. And yes, I know JJ decided to go small, and he was catching lobs over Gabe Vincent. But I was just so happy for him, man. And I just get such a kick out of the lack of social media reaction whenever Rudy has a good game because of how many people crack on him. What'd you make of the way that the T-Wolves disposed of the Lakers and your thoughts on Rudy's game?
Well, one, I definitely was one of many who were fooled by kind of the smoke and mirrors Lakers defense that they put together for a couple months in the regular season. That was not a team that was ready for playoff prime time, and the Wolves certainly exposed that. And then look, oh man, what a game 5 for Gobert. And the funny thing is, like, you and I both, we've watched Rudy's entire career. We know how stupid sometimes the narrative can be around him. Oh, Rudy gets played off the floor in the playoffs. It has literally never happened. The funny thing is, this series was the closest to that actually being true through 4 games. It was his worst offensive series through 4 games. Then game 5 started, and boy, oh boy, Rudy Chamberlain showed up, baby. Will Gobert was in the house, 27 and 24. And the thing is, Rudy's problem in terms of playing against small ball teams has not been the defensive end. It's been that his dominance was mitigated on the defensive end, but he's never been the reason the defense fell apart, right? He just wasn't able to cover up all of his teammates' flaws, or he wasn't able to plug all the holes. The problem with Rudy against small ball teams was he wasn't able to punish them on the other end, and he damn sure punished them on the other end in this game. And he didn't do it by posting up. He didn't do it. He wasn't Shaquille O'Neal. He did it by dominating the glass, by grabbing every offensive rebound, by dunking it, by being available, for dump off passes and throwing it down. And I know Rudy didn't want to take the victory lap. It's just the first round, all those kind of things. I know how sweet it was for him to dominate Luka's team like that. I know how sweet it was for him to dunk on Luka's head. I told him you should have talked that Slovenian to him. You can't bleep and guard me, bleeper. And you know what? If this is a Rudy revenge tour, no better foe for the second round than Draymond Green's Golden State Warriors. It's going to be a fun one.
For sure. Do you give – I mean, look, to ask if you give Golden State a puncher's chance is silly because, of who they have on the team. This just feels like – it feels similar, Tim, to the problems Houston poses, but Minnesota has more offensive juice. And I want to watch the Steph thing as much as I possibly can, as long as I possibly can. But your early thoughts on T-Wolves Warriors?
I think it's going to be a heck of a series, man. And, I say what you want about Draymond, but and I love Dorian Finney-Smith, but Draymond as a small ball center is a different type of animal. Like Draymond's, it's going to be physical. Draymond, like Rudy's not going to be able to grab 24 rebounds in the game. I don't think. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, and it'll be fun to watch. The other thing is, Draymond has 4 techs and 2 flagrant fouls already going into the second round.
Yep.
You're suspended at 7 techs and 4 flagrant foul points. And you've got to deal with Mansour Gobert. Let's see how many times Rudy can get Draymond suspended in the series.
For sure. All right, last thing, and I'll set you loose. Just your thoughts. You were courtside. I mean, that was a soul-stealing win from Denver. Oklahoma City had that thing wrapped up, and wondered what it was like to witness that, courtside, the brilliance of Jokic, the game winner from Aaron Gordon, and your thoughts on the rest of the series after Game 1 is in the books.
I thought it was pretty fascinating to hear Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's response after that game. And he said it should be fun. Basically, hey, we get to see what we're really made of now, how we respond to some real adversity. Because, listen, that was a complete and utter meltdown of epic proportions. And hey, give Joker dominated, and the Nuggets came back and they took the game. Dude, the Thunder gave it away.
Yep.
And they gave it away by the offense drying up in the last 4 minutes. And they gave it away by just terrible execute. Okay, you executed the analytics game plan, but man, there's got to be some nuance in there. I mean, to get I get fouling up 3, but fouling up 3 when you are, when you're 80 feet away from the basket and 2 fouls in the final 13 seconds that burn a total of 1.9 seconds. And then I love Chet Holmgren, man, but his breathing was restricted up there on the free throw line. So, I think one of the great things about OKC, despite them being a young team, is they're very mature. They're very even-keeled. I think they've done a great job showing they can handle success. And I'm not going to say this is the first time they've dealt with adversity. Listen, Chet fractured his pelvis this year. They've had adversity. But this is a different kind, and this is a different monster. This is a championship-proven core that you're competing against. This is the 3-time MVP. And by the way, you know what? It's one game. I don't want to overreact. I believe Shea's going to win the MVP. But, David Robinson won the MVP one year, and he faced Hakeem Olajuwon in the playoffs. And it ain't head-to-head. I get that. But round 1 of what might be a 7-round fight certainly went to Nikola Jokic. And the Thunder need Shea to play like he did all year long, which we've only really seen once in these playoffs. They need Jalen Williams to play like he did in the first round and not in the Western Conference semifinals last year. And, if they get to a situation where they're fouling up 3, they need to do a little bit better job of kind of having some nuance to that strategy.
Well said. Yeah, a guy named Karl Malone won a couple of MVPs. I'm not sure a guy named Michael Jordan enjoyed that, so we saw how that ended.
Yeah.
All right, our guy, appreciate it, man. Enjoy the time there. Should be a fun series, and we'll chat soon.
Always a pleasure.
All right, Tim McMahon covers the NBA for ESPN. Get him on Twitter at ESPN_McMahon. Wrote a book that was released in March, Luka Doncic and the Curse of Greatness. The links to buy that book are up on his Twitter page, as he was courtside last night watching the Denver Nuggets just snatch this game away from OKC. All right, we still have Spencer Linton, our friend from BYU TV. But coming up on the other side, Lady Luck shines on the Utah Hockey Club. Will it shine on the Utah Jazz? Don't go anywhere. Keep it right here. Giving away one round of golf to Glendale today. It is our Festival of Tees, brought to you by our friends at the UGA. Every day during the spring, we're hooking you guys up. ESPN Festival of Tees is powered by the Utah Golf Association. Each day of spring, ESPN 700 is giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Listen to the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell from 10 to 11, the Sean O'Connell Show from 11 to 2, and our show, The Drive with Spence Checketts from 2 to 6 for your chance to win each day from ESPN 700 and the Utah Golf Association. Details can be found on ESPN700sports.com. 877-353-0700. That's the text line. Should we do trivia today? Should we compliment Porter? Should we criticize Porter's performance as the producer of the program? 877-353-0700. You know what? Stay tuned. You're going to have to listen to the entire segment because I haven't decided what I want it to do yet.
There we go.
We're going to do it at the very end.
Make them earn it.
Porter, how do you think it lands around here that the Utah Hockey Club needed 1 year to have the lady luck that the Utah Jazz have not had in 50?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a little bit of a jealousy, but I touched on it. I touched on it a little yesterday. It's a little unwarranted, right? There's a lot of Jazz fans that'll be like, pointing to their bad lottery luck. It hasn't happened that many times. You're looking at a sample size of how many times have you been in the lottery? What, less than 10?
This will be the 10th, I believe, this year.
Right. So, I understand that you hope to move up in the draft, but when you are cheering for a team who historically is in the playoffs year after year after year after year for decades, you're probably not going to get that much lottery luck. So I'll say this, Jazz fans, if your team keeps losing and losing and losing, maybe you'll have some lottery luck in the near future. There's a trade-off there I'm not sure you want to make. There is a trade-off there. But I think that you'll rather get lucky in the lottery like one or two times and then move away from that space entirely. But we'll see. We'll see if the Jazz are able to do that.
For context, all right, so the Utah Jazz will find out their lottery luck coming up on Monday. For context, as far as playoff droughts and such, the Jazz have not won a playoff series in 4 seasons. 2021 Western Conference first-round win. The Charlotte Hornets have not won a playoff series in 21 years. 21 years for the Sacramento Kings, 17 years for the Detroit Pistons, 15 years for the Orlando Magic. I'm not including play-in games here because smart people know play-in games are not playoff games, Porter. Smart people do.
Smart people.
I do. Even the Chicago Bulls, it's been a decade of futility. Washington randomly won a first-round series back in 2017. I think that was the John Wall, Brad Beal teams that didn't work out. It's been 8 years since the Spurs have won a playoff series. There are just epic droughts that happen in this league, and we simply have never had that happen here. And I underscore it all the time because I want people to understand. I want people to understand how rare it is and how phenomenal it is that these 2 decades. I mean, the Knicks outside of the Melo won 1 playoff series, right? The Melo Knicks won 1 playoff series, and then they took the Celtics in the second round to 5-6 games. If I remember that correctly.
They won a few playoff series, but the season you're talking about, they beat the Celtics and then lost to the Pacers.
Are you sure? I read that the Carmelo Anthony New York Knicks won a single playoff series. Could I have read something on the internet that's not true? Because I don't think that's real.
Maybe.
If it's on the internet, it's real.
The 2013, the good team you're talking about did win just one series. But that's the trade-off I'm talking about, though. You want to live in that space, Spence. You want to live in lottery space. You can be like us, and you can be awaiting the lottery every year.
The Carmelo Anthony New York Knicks team won a total of 3 playoff series. So what I read was incorrect. But that Melo phase for the New York Knicks came in between about a decade of futility, and then after that there was another 7, 8, 9 years of futility. So it isn't even a small market thing. It's an NBA thing. It's a pro basketball thing. Like, nobody talks about the Nick Van Exel, Eldon Campbell Lakers. But it happens to every team in every city we're really unique here in Salt Lake that throughout the Millers' time as the stewards of our pro basketball team, it just didn't take very long to get back on track. But what happened last night with the Utah Hockey Club is an absolute game changer. Okay, so our friend Belle Frazier from the Salt Lake Tribune wrote a good piece today, sltrib.com. You're going to hear from Bill Armstrong coming up. We'll call that about 45 minutes from now or so, a little less than an hour. The Utah Hockey Club had a 1.5% chance of moving up 10 spots in the lottery. And as we were watching this live here in studio during the 5 o'clock hour, when I realized that all they needed was the number 3 ping pong ball to bounce up into where it needed to go, we decided to stay on air for a couple more minutes, and boom, number 3 pops up. They show a smiling Bill Armstrong, and within a matter of seconds, Utah Hockey Club went from the 14th overall pick to the 4th. They moved up 10 spots. They did not have a chance to get the number 1 overall pick because of where they finished in the NHL standings. So the NHL lottery, it's the order for the opening 16 picks in the first round, okay? So, of course, the participants are the teams that missed out on the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it happened in 2 phases. And the first sequence of 4 numbered lottery balls determined the number 1 overall pick, which actually went to the New York Islanders. First time the Islanders have won the lottery, I think, since 2009. And the Islanders also had a very, very small chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. They move up 10 spots as well. And then the Utah Hockey Club won the second sequence, which was supposed to determine the number 2 overall pick, but the Utah Hockey Club could only advance a maximum of 10 spots. So Utah is 4th overall, San Jose got 2nd, and Chicago in 3rd. So Utah, of course, lottery team, 89 points, which was 7th of the 2nd wild card spots in the Western Conference. And here's the thing, like, I don't know if you want to call this karma. I don't know if you want to call this whatever adjective or term you want to use. The Jazz clearly tanked to be among the worst teams in pro basketball this year. Even Justin Zanuck came as close to saying it out loud as you're ever going to hear a general manager saying it during his postseason media availability when he said, hey, we did everything we could do to make sure that we ended up in the spot where we ended up. That's as close as you will ever hear a roster constructor in pro basketball say in front of the media or in front of the public, we lost on purpose. You're never going to hear that. You'll hear it off air. You'll hear it behind closed doors. You're never going to hear it in a public setting. So Zanuck essentially admitted, like, we tanked. Didn't say that because they never do. They say things like we're developing young players. They say things like we're building a culture slowly, brick by brick, helping these young players understand what we do here. The Utah Hockey Club did not tank. They did the best they could until the very end of the season. They actually finished really, really well. I mean, they were unfortunately eliminated a lot earlier than I think most people understood. We talked about it on the show. I mean, in the world of pro hockey, only a 3 or a 4 point gap with 15, 16 games left doesn't seem like a lot. The reality is that it is. And so I was resigned with about 3 weeks left in the season that they just were not going to be able to get this done. But they won 6 of their final 9 games and played some of their best hockey at the end of March through April. They hung 7 on the Predators. They beat the Stars 5-3 in Dallas. They smoked the Kraken. That's a weird sentence. They just beat the Kraken. Let's not talk about smoking Kraken on the program. 7-1 here in Salt Lake. They beat the Jets 4-1. They played some of their best hockey, Freudian slip, at the end of the season. So they did not tank to try to get a better draft pick. And you know what? I'm glad they were rewarded for that. I don't like the tanking element of pro basketball. I don't like the incentive structure in the NBA rewarding futility. I would like to see that changed. I do not have an answer for it. If I did, I probably wouldn't be doing AM radio in Salt Lake City every afternoon. I'd probably have a different job. But they did not tank. The Utah Hockey Club did not tank. But they were rewarded for their efforts anyway. And, of course, it simply is lady luck. That's what it comes down to. So as Bell points out in her piece, and Bell does a great job outlining all this, sltrib.com, UHC finished 21 more points than the Nashville Predators, 13 more points than the Flyers, Bruins, and the Kraken, 10 more points than the Sabres, and 9 more points than the Anaheim Ducks. But yet the Utah Hockey Club will pick in front of all of them in the draft. So, of course, Clayton Keller, 90 points last season. He was the 7th overall pick in the 2016 draft. Dylan Guenther, 27 goals in his first NHL season, 9th overall pick in the 2021 draft. And as Bell points out, in this year, there is not one of those obvious Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard number 1 overall picks. Macklin was the number 1 overall pick last year. Bedard was the number 1 overall pick in 2023. So just some names to watch out for. Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, James Hagen, Porter Martone, Anton Frondel. Those are the top 5 names, along with Caleb Desnoyers. I don't know anything about these players. I'm not going to be the guy that cracks the mic and pretends I'm watching hockey tape diligently. But according to what Bell points out, what most of the NHL mock drafts are looking at this year are 5 or 6 top shelf players, as opposed to just a Cooper Flag like on the NBA side of things. But the really cool thing about this, this is what you have to have in order to roster construct in pro sports, to do it the right way and expedite the process to reward a fan base with better performance, teams that actually are serious about winning. So if you've become a fan of our hockey team in only 1 year, you should be giddy today, because this gives Bill Armstrong a tremendous amount of optionality as far as what he can do to potentially expedite the growth of this young roster. They're the 3rd youngest team in the NHL, and they had something to say about potentially making the wild card until the final couple of weeks of the season. So a couple of options here. You could add another young piece to this puzzle. You'll hear from Bill Armstrong coming up at 4:30 today. He told Bell, he said, quote, "We really look at the best player available. We've always done that as a staff. It's a good draft. I think when you're picking up top, you have the chance to get a real game changer, a top 2-line guy that can be a difference maker on your team. You still have to pick well." Now, in hockey, different than basketball or different than football, oftentimes a hockey team will draft a very young player that does not see the NHL level for sometimes 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how young the player is. Is it junior or college hockey? Usually they go back to college or they go back to junior hockey for at least a year, if not more than that. So where is Bill at as far as what he wants to do with this pick? Because as Bell points out, a lot of the teams that are picking behind the hockey club are more in need of developmental pieces because they are in a full rebuild, and the Utah Hockey Club continues their rebuild, but they're about 5 years into it. And this is the time where you want to see your hard work paying off with results. Because fan bases, look, it's just, you guys know this now. You've experienced it for 3 years with the Jazz and 1 mini year with the hockey club, but we're lucky that we were able to get the Utah Hockey Club from Arizona, where the Arizona fan base had been suffering through futility, quite frankly, with a young team that was rebuilding for 4 years. And now we get them kind of on the upward trajectory. And if you're looking at what Bill Armstrong could do with this pick, I'm sure there's part of him that is looking at all these young players. And most of the prospects that Bell points out that I just read are really, really young that probably will not be playing in the NHL next year. So if you're Bill Armstrong, do you pick up the phone and you call one of these other teams that are clearly in full rebuild? Do you call Philly? Do you call Nashville? Do you call Seattle? Do you call the Ducks or the Bruins? And do you talk about what they have available on their roster with veteran players that they're not interested in having because they're going full rebuild? And do you talk about what you can bring in for number 4 to maybe bring in a veteran center or, solidify the attack a little bit? It was a pretty average power play team. And also the 2 areas where the hockey club really struggled this year was they had a really tough time holding leads in, they would take a lead into the 3rd, and then they would give up that lead in the final period and end up losing the game. And then they also struggled winning games at home. And those two things really signal to me this is a team that needs more leadership and needs a veteran presence, and they were able to do that. Mikhail Sergachev has lifted 2 Stanley Cups, and he was awesome as the frontline defenseman last year. So you have so many different options, and one of the options is, yes, this Hagens kid is a Boston College kid. He's a college hockey player. Okay, this Misa kid is playing in the OHL with the Saginaw Spirit. He's their captain. And most of these young prospects are like U18 players that will not be playing for the Utah Hockey Club for at least a year, if not more. So a lot of good choices at Bill Armstrong's disposal as a result of the Utah Hockey Club moving up 10 full spots to grab the number 4 overall pick. But there are a lot of teams in need of great young players that have good veteran players on their roster that might be inclined to engage with Bill Armstrong about a potential trade to expedite the growth of this Utah Hockey Club team with a good veteran player that can provide some punch up top. Because I think, you get John Marino from the Devils last year for the 49th pick in the draft to put a couple of picks in the deal for Mikhail Sergachev with the Lightning. And both those two turn out to be great as far as the club's first defensive pairing. And you just have to wonder whether or not Bill Armstrong wants to sacrifice some of this draft capital, namely number 4, for a dynamic veteran attacking player to solidify the power play and also help this team hold leads that they gave up time and time again after leading going into the third period. So a really exciting day for the Smith Entertainment Group, the owners of the Utah Hockey Club. This is the type of lottery luck that you need, no matter who you are, in order to either add to the young group or expedite the process with some veteran pieces. And now we wait to see Utah Hockey Club with 1.5% chance of moving up, which they did. And the Jazz have a much better chance of moving up, which hopefully they will. And we'll find out coming up on Monday of next week. Don't forget, we are your home of the NBA Draft Lottery. Coming up on Monday of next week, we will say goodnight just to Sco Shirley. I don't really use that word very much. A skosh.
Is that a unit of measurement?
Just a skosh. It's, I think, like that's slang for like just a tiny bit.
Just a touch?
We're going to say goodnight to Sco Shirley.
Okay.
For the NBA Draft Lottery. Weird segment. I also said they smoked the Kraken. That's a Freudian slip. Not sure why I decided to go that direction.
They did, though. They did.
They did. I just figured, it's probably a better way to put that. So the Jazz have a 14% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. They have a 52.1% chance of staying in the top 4, and they cannot fall further than 5. So again, Sco Shirley, Monday, we'll bring you the draft lottery, and we'll get to more of this coming up. But coming up on the other side, we'll do some college basketball, some college football. Our friend Spencer Litton stops by from NBA TV. We'll bring you some sound from the presser, where Bill Armstrong himself will tell you about some of his options with the number 4 pick. Then we're going to move into the 5 o'clock hour of the drive on a Tuesday show. So don't go anywhere. Looks like the Cleveland Cavaliers might be without Darius Garland, and now I think I just saw that Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are questionable. Said the Cavs are in trouble, man. Telling you. NBA playoffs action, NBA playoff action tonight. Hopefully we have something even kind of what we saw last night. But we'll get back to the playoffs coming up in a bit. Do some college basketball, some college football, whatever else comes our way on this Tuesday afternoon with our guy Spencer Linton from BYU TV. Hello, Spencer. Happy Tuesday. How are you?
Spence, doing well, man. Good to connect with you once again. Busy time of year. We love it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate the time. Do you have a basketball rooting interest, or are you just simply a fan of the Utah Jazz?
I am a fan of the Jazz and have been so lifelong, really, going back to the Stockton and Malone days. I mean, that's what I grew up with. So, like many of your listeners can share in that regard to the loving the old school Jazz. But, yeah, I'd like to see the team turn it around. I'm excited about Will Hardy and his new contract, and I feel like he's the man for the rebuild. But as far as playoffs go, like, I love good basketball games. Like, yesterday's games were so fantastic in the fourth quarter specifically. Like, I just love to watch high-level basketball and clutch play, and we saw a ton of that last night. So right now, no real rooting interest because the Jazz are out of it, but I just want to see good games. Though I did find myself randomly pulling for the New York Knicks to win that game. So I guess there is something there. I feel like it's been a long time since New York's been in it, so maybe I feel like basketball will be a little bit better if the Knicks could be in it once again and do something good.
My guy. I knew I liked you. No, I appreciate that. Let me ask you this while we're in the space. Like me, I think I'm a little bit older than you are, but like me, when it comes to springtime in Salt Lake City, do you find yourself missing the buzz that we have downtown when the Jazz are in the postseason this time of year?
Yeah, naturally. There's just that little bit of drop off, and you tell yourself like, "Oh, I'll be able to fill it with other things," but it just you're right. It's different when there isn't something to look forward to. It's so fun to watch Jazz basketball in the playoffs, or like look forward to that. It's a circle the calendar type of event for me whenever the Jazz have a playoff game. Like, it's almost like I plan everything around that. Oh, well, we got to watch the Jazz game. Like, what are my buddies doing? What's my family doing? The Jazz are in the playoffs. It's game 3 of the first round or of the Western Conference second round, whatever. I like to have that in my life when I'm planning things around those playoff games. So, yes, I do feel like it's just a natural little bit of a letdown and almost a quiet atmosphere, and it feels like we go into the offseason too early, and then we're just longing for college football to return in August.
Indeed, and I do want to do some football today, but before we get to that topic, that portion of the conversation, let's stick with some basketball, and since you and I last spoke, James Taft Fredette, better known as Jimmer, friend of the show, officially announced that he has retired from the game of basketball. And, you know, Spencer, I've kind of changed my view about Jimmer. And I've changed my view about the term bust overall. Like, no part of me believes a 6'0" white kid from Glens Falls, New York, who made millions of dollars playing the game of basketball should be considered a bust. And I never thought that he was going to be a good NBA player. This goes back to a conversation I had with the BYU legend himself, Danny Ainge. I sat next to Danny during the Mountain West Conference tournament when Fredette dropped whatever on Kawhi and Fredette was dropping whatever on everybody. And I asked him, I said, so what do you think? What do you think, Jimmer, NBA? And he said he's got no shot. And I went, whoa, like, okay. And as we sat there throughout the game, Danny kind of helped me understand what he was seeing as far as, one of the things he pointed out, and this was intentional with Dave Rose, and Dave probably gave Jimmer a bit of a break on defense because he knew he had to have every ounce of his offense to win games. But it wasn't that Jimmer didn't guard. It was like he never got into a stance. And then Danny walked me through kind of the difference between the ability to shoot off the bounce, which Jimmer did at an elite level, and the ability to catch and shoot, which Fredette actually never was very good at. So when Jimmer was going up against lesser competition that couldn't guard him off the bounce, he was going to dominate. But when he was going up against elite athletes that wouldn't allow him the space, he just didn't have the game to evolve in the NBA. But ultimately, it was such a fun run to watch him at Brigham Young, and then, of course, his life in basketball overseas and with the Olympics. But from a BYU perspective, as Jimmer walks away, what's kind of the conversation down that way?
You know, I didn't think that I would feel, I guess, as sad in a way as I did when Jimmer announced his official retirement, because he has brought so much happiness and joy to his basketball fans, but not just basketball fans, but just because he's a good person to the core. Like, I don't feel like there's a fake bone in Jimmer Fredette's body. He is as genuine a BYU star as there is. And so just the finalization of it was almost a little bit like, I can't believe we're never going to watch Jimmer Fredette play competitive basketball in any facet again. And I think a lot of BYU fans shared that similar feeling with me, that it just, wow. Well, I mean, what a journey that he has encountered and taken us on through basketball, through obviously his BYU days that you were just pointing out, and then a very, very tough, cutthroat NBA portion of his career. But to watch him go to China and dominate and be the Chinese League MVP, and then go to Panathinaikos in Greece and play for Rick Pitino and try and fill a role position there, and then back to China again and into the NBA G League. And now he's a G League All-Star and works his way back into the NBA through a couple of 10-day contracts. Remarkable stuff. So easy to root for. I would be hard-pressed to believe that he won't have his number retired in the Marriott Center sometime in the next year. It's typically 15 years from the time that you're done playing at the university, and you have to be, an All-American and officially retired. And so all those things have come to fruition. So I expect his number to be retired. But yeah, there was a little piece of, man, it's kind of stinks that we're never going to watch Jimmer play in any sort of competitive facet again, which was what made the Olympics 3x3 thing so fun, because he took on this brand new avenue of basketball, ascended to become the number one ranked 3x3 player in the world, only to have his Olympic dream crushed. But then you watch him and his attitude handle it with class and dignity, like he's always done, which makes it even more heartbreaking that he didn't get a chance to really push for that gold medal. But all in all, you step back, and I'm with you. You can't call his career a bust. You can call him an absolute inspiration and an incredible example of taking on several adversities, facing several hurdles, being shut down, and just continuing to work and find your place. And, a pro's pro in every sense of the word. He worked so hard every day of his basketball career. So sad to see it shut down, no competition anymore, but excited that he's leading the 3x3 front and that he'll be the GM essentially of United States 3x3 basketball as they try and get back to the Olympics and then compete for a gold. So I'm excited to watch him in a managerial role, and wouldn't be surprised to see him do some TV, some broadcasting, and certainly he'll be around basketball in some capacity.
If you would have asked me last year, I would have said maybe at some point Richie Saunders makes some money in Europe playing basketball. And then after the season he had, year one under Kevin, I became pretty convinced that he had a chance to make his way in the NBA. And at the age of 23, you want to get the thing started, because if you actually stick in the NBA, you get to your second contract. That's when generational wealth comes your way. So I was a little surprised that Richie decided to come back. Now, this is nothing but good news for BYU. I wonder what sort of insight you could give us as to the reasoning that Richie leaned upon in order to come back and play for Kevin once again.
Yeah, I talked to him at length, speaking of Richie, in the BYU TV facilities on the air and off the air a little over a week ago. And he straight up just said it was just such a difficult decision because the NBA opportunity was very much on the table. And Richie's a guy that doesn't hyperbolize anything. He doesn't add any sort of fluff to it. He'll just tell you exactly what it is. I love the real nature of him. And so when we asked him, what were your NBA opportunities? And he said the consensus was early to mid-second round after my workouts. There was a lot of belief that I would go and impress people, and people have been comparing me to Alex Caruso and a few other NBA comps and being all Big 12. Like, I was told that there's a great chance that I would be drafted early second round to mid-second round at the latest, and that I was going to have a place on an NBA roster somewhere. So he said that, like, hearing that from a lot of people and realizing, oh my gosh, this is my dream. Like I can go to the NBA right now and do this. That's what made the decision to come back so difficult. And he's like, I just felt so blessed that as hard as this decision was, I'm looking at two different scenarios. One, I can go back and play for Coach Young again, and he can help me develop my NBA game even more, but I'll have an opportunity to play with A.J. DeBonta and Robert Wright III, and we could do something historic at BYU and go maybe next level, or I can go and fulfill a lifelong dream and get to the NBA, and I can just start that path. So he's like, both options were incredible. And I mean, there was a reason he waited till the very last minute. And he said that it took conversations with his wife, Sierra, a lot of them, and consideration of can I still improve my game while staying at BYU and at least maintain the NBA status that I have right now for next year. And they felt confident that they could do that. Not only that, but get even a little bit better and maybe improve his draft stock along with the additional exposure that's going to be so naturally there for BYU because of A.J. DeBonta and Rob Wright III and some others. And so he waffled. He went back and forth a lot. He truly believed that at worst he was going to be a mid-second round pick, but he believes he can be better than that. And he feels like he can maximize the opportunity at BYU, and with all of the additional exposure and everybody watching very closely this year, to Richie, it felt like that was kind of the edge. And when he makes a decision, he's all in. I love that about him too. It's no like, oh man, maybe I should have done this. Like when he goes. He is committed to the process. So respect that about him. Like you said, it's great news for BYU because now we're talking about a team that we believe at worst should be in the Sweet 16 and have a real shot to get back to BYU's second ever Elite Eight, if not further.
Yeah, it's always tough to be like, well, they should make the Final Four. It's a one-and-done tournament. Great teams are eliminated every single year. On paper, when you look at some of the projections and the combination of the incoming freshman recruits led by AJ and a couple of others, the Xavion Stanton kid, now this transfer portal class. I mean, most everybody, Spencer, that I've seen has this team as a top 5 team coming into next season. It's an embarrassment of riches. Have you guys done an exercise where you try to figure out like who's starting and who's playing? There's a lot of good players on this roster.
Oh yeah, we have run the gamut in that regard of like wondering how Kevin Young is going to stack this rotation and who's going to start. My best guess is that certainly Keba Keita will start at the 5. I believe that BYU will. It could be Dominic Diamande at the 4 and A.J. DeBonta at the 3 and Richie at the 2 and Rob Wright at the 1. Obviously, the guy that BYU just pulled into the transfer portal recently, the 4-star from Southern Illinois, another good scorer. He's a guy that could start at the 3 and kind of cycle things around. Really, I think it's just the big question mark is only one player. I know that Rob Wright III is going to start, Richie's going to start, A.J. is going to start, and Cave's going to start. But what does BYU do with that last spot in the starting 5? But now BYU is in a position like they were last year where they can go at least 9 deep on the bench, which is just, you called it an embarrassment of riches. I don't think that's sensationalized at all. Everybody feels like they deserve to play a lot of minutes. It's going to be a highly competitive room again. And they were back in the gym last week for the first time. And after the first couple of practices, all I heard was, man, it's just so competitive, like such an edge for all of them. And so that is a difficult scenario for Kevin Young to handle again, is how do I keep all these guys happy? Well, you don't. You just got to let the guys go earn it, get into what we feel is going to be a 9 or 10-man rotation again and go. But what a luxury to be able to go to the bench, even for a guy like Dawson Baker or Mihailo Boskovic, who's a tough matchup in some situational basketball that proved huge for BYU last year. Like those guys coming off the bench and being able to impact this team again to spell some of these superstars it's big time. I mean, these guys are experienced dudes who are not going to shy away from big time moments because they've been in it and they've been in it for a while. So Expectations are sky high, but I'm with you. I would caution basketball fans in the state of Utah or anybody that's watching BYU. To me, it would be remarkable if BYU went back-to-back Sweet 16s. I mean, they've been to 3 in 45 years. So if they could go back-to-back, are you kidding me? And then, hey, let's see, get to another Sweet 16. If BYU is a 2 or a 3 seed, then they got a great chance to get to an Elite Eight, and we'll go from there. But I kind of feel like once they get to a second consecutive Sweet 16, if they do that, then you start to enter slowly into that house money territory. It's like, okay, let's see what else we can do, and let's strike while the iron's hot with AJ and company in town.
And really, if we're honest, the headliner and a chance to be a historic once-in-a-generation opportunity for not just BYU fans but basketball fans in the state is to watch AJ Debonsa play for Kevin and BYU. And when that signing became official, I remember thinking, like, this will mean a tremendous amount of opportunity and exposure for BYU basketball in a way that I don't think they've seen before. And John Rothstein reports that BYU will play in the Jimmy V Classic with, UConn and Florida, and they're going to play Clemson round 1 at Madison Square Garden. My question, though, is what sort of tangible buzz is there down there about AJ, and do you think BYU basketball fans, Spencer, I don't know if you've seen this kid play. There's nothing he doesn't do well. Like, when everybody asks, like, people ask me, what does he have to improve on? I'm like, well, really nothing. He just has to keep incrementally getting better at everything that he's already awesome at. He's built. You hear the Paul George, LeBron James. He is that type of modern-day wing. He will be an excellent NBA player, generationally special, potentially. Do you think BYU basketball fans really understand what they're about to watch in this kid?
No, I don't, because they've never seen anybody like him in Provo. And because I've seen him play, granted, at competition level in the high school ranks, but still, like, you see it and you're like, holy cow, that dude is so refined and polished. His footwork, his basketball acumen, just his awareness of where everybody is on the floor, his ability to play above the rim. And I don't think people understand how good of a defender he can be when he commits to that specifically. Like, I agree with Kevin Young. I watched him play defense. I'm like, dude, that guy could be all Big 12 defensive team. I'm not kidding. Like, we talk all about his scoring and everything he does on the offensive side of the floor. I'm telling you, Spence, he has the chance to be a special defender if he wants to commit to that part of his game. And so BYU specifically is going to work with him there. He could be great both ways. And you just don't know until you see it in person. But BYU fans, I don't believe, will understand what they actually have until they get to witness AJ on the floor playing against Villanova in Las Vegas on November 3rd. I think that's the date for the season tip-off neutral site game. But wow, when they see that and then get him back in the Marriott Center, then I think reality will begin to set in a little bit. But right now it's just like highlights on social media and things like that. Watching him play in person is such a different experience. And his dad, Ace, we need to give him credit, BYU fans, and frankly, basketball fans, that for why he's even in this state, because AJ told me last week, BYU was not on my list. Like, when I put my list together, like, BYU, that wasn't even a thought. And he said, my dad looked at me and said, just do me a favor, just add BYU to the list. Trust me. And he said, BYU? He's like, just trust me, add BYU to the list. Let's go check it out. And so he said, I listened to my dad. I took his advice. I put BYU on the list, and then I made my first visit, and I was like, oh, my bad. I didn't know, Dad, but now I know. Like, that is a special place. Kevin's a special coach. This could actually develop into something, and that's kind of how it all started. So I know that we hear a lot of tough instances where, their parents are too involved and things like that. In this case, if it weren't for the great relationship that Ace and AJ have, he wouldn't have even put BYU on his list. So keep that in mind when you're watching him play in person. You can thank his dad for helping him at least consider BYU and then ultimately end up in Provo.
I think at most P4 major institutions like a Utah or BYU, even if the football team is expected to win 0 games, there's more excitement for football than basketball. And I think BYU has a chance to have a good football and a basketball team. But is there more buzz on campus for this upcoming football or basketball season?
right now, I think in the moment, because BYU just went to the Sweet 16 and because fans in large part have been waiting to see if Richie Saunders came back and who else BYU is going to get through the portal. And it feels like the news cycle is just producing something big time more regularly for basketball right now than football. And that's saying something because football is getting guys through the portal too, right? But it's on the heels of an incredibly entertaining and unexpected basketball season. I feel like right now, prisoners of the moment, most would say, oh man, I love football, but I'm so excited about basketball because when has BYU been a preseason top 5 team ever? They haven't. I can tell you that the highest preseason ranking BYU has ever had in history, no joke, was back when Krešimir Ćosić was playing in the early 70s, and BYU had a preseason ranking of 12. That's the best it's ever been, Spence. Number 12. And it was 13 coming into Danny Ainge's junior year. BYU has never been more highly thought of in a preseason capacity than they are right now. So hard not to get lost in that when they're coming in somewhere between 5 and 8, and people are starting to throw out the words "gulp Final Four," and it's like, oh yeah, just okay, slow down a little bit. But and these aren't just like homers. I mean, this is John Rothstein of CBS Sports and all these high-level dudes, Jeff Goodman, and it's a common theme now. Like BYU is going to be a top 10 team in the preseason, so it's already pacing to be history. So yeah, I think most are prisoners of the basketball moment. I could say the same thing about last year because football had a bad season in 2023 and we're 5-7, and then in comes Kevin Young and the NBA buzz and Yegor Demin and all these things started to happen for basketball. People were excited about it in the offseason. Then football started, and BYU destroyed Kansas State. And just like that, Spence, it was like, okay, forget basketball, but I'm all in on football. BYU's 3-0. They just embarrassed Kansas State, and then they're off and running. If BYU football starts the season again, undefeated in non-conference, and let's say they go and beat Colorado in their Big 12 opener, and they're 4-0, and they're ranked in the top 15 because I think they're going to be a preseason top 25 team, then it will shift again back to football. But it's probably going to take a 3-0 or 4-0 start for the full onslaught of football fans to be like, hey, I'm backing on now. Let's push pause on basketball.
So with the remaining few minutes we have, let's do a little football. And, you know, the cycle since NIL and transfer portal became a reality for really every team. It's not just Utah. It's not just BYU. It's most teams across the country. When you finish spring ball, you have your exit interviews with the coaches, you understand where you're at, and then you get calls from other schools, and the transfer portal opens. You're going to lose talent. Utah did. BYU did. Keelan Marion, Harrison Taggart, Spencer are the two names that stand out to me. Your thoughts on those two losses and any other losses you think really hurt?
Yeah, the Keelan Marion one is at the top of the list. That hurts because he was so dynamic, specifically in the special teams game. I mean, it had been probably since James Dye in the mid to late 90s that BYU had a guy return multiple kicks for touchdowns in a single season. And Keelan Marion brought back that dynamic. I know there's a lot that goes into it, and Kelly Papinga is doing a great job coaching the special teams for BYU, and Parker Kingston did his thing with multiple punt return touchdowns. But Keelan just has an ability to hit a seam and go, and his mental toughness, his preparation in that regard, that's tough to replace. And I had him as my number 2 overall receiver coming out of spring football behind only Chase Roberts, and I thought that he was poised to take a significant role. Now, what I've learned is he was not told that he was the number 2 receiver, and that may have factored in a little bit to why he wanted to seek another opportunity. But for me, it hurts the most on special teams with that explosive playmaking ability and the toughness that he brings to the field. He backs down from nobody. He is a true competitor. And I know that getting a guy like Tiger Bachmeier will help. And BYU has another guy, Frischneck, through the portal. And they already have Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston, and they retained JoJo Phillips. And they got guys that were good in high school football in the state. Cody Hagan, who's now got he's back from his true mission legs, and he's healthy. BYU will be fine there, but that one hurts. Tiger Bachmeier helps a little bit because he produced some nice numbers as a freshman at Stanford. But we'll see, and Tiger's a guy that returned a punt for a touchdown as well. And will it be Parker Kingston and Tiger together in that capacity? We'll find out what Kelly Papinga decides to do. But that's the number one toughest loss for me. Harrison Taggart, consistent, just a hard-nosed, good kid, good football player. But I believe that Siale Esera actually has a higher ceiling than Harrison. I'm not saying that Siale is as good as Harrison right now, but I believe that Siale can be better than Harrison's ceiling. So that one doesn't hit as much because I believe that Siale is going to extend himself and put himself into a greater role, and he will shine. We saw moments of brilliance, especially with his increased role in the Alamo Bowl. He was giving Shedeur Sanders in Colorado all sorts of trouble. So don't feel as panicked, if you will, about that one. But we'll see what the BYU special teams are after the loss of Keelan Marion. And I know that BYU has worked hard to add some good pieces through the portal, specifically the defensive line. That one, to me, Spence, is just like, the names are there. I know they got Kirkland from from Oklahoma State. And obviously Keanu Tanavaso has maybe you've heard about that one. I don't know. His addition from Utah to BYU, can those two guys with the coaching of some other guys that have been in the program for a little bit, Logan Latui and others, can that defensive line finally create the havoc that we thought that Kalani Sitake would bring to BYU immediately once he was the head coach?
Keanu, what was that last name? Can you spell I'm not familiar with this player you're referring to. Keanu, if you could text me later the spelling of that name so I could do a Google search, Spencer, I'd appreciate it.
You got it, brother.
Hey, in that vein, we'll end on this, okay? So I am of the opinion that social media interactions between sports fans is akin to people with mental health issues throwing their feces at each other, okay? And I don't program my show based off of that. But here's my question for somebody who works at BYU who I find to be a measured thinker. The name of the game these days is having your NIL in a position to pay talent to play for your teams. BYU is doing that. Why can't we just say it out loud, and why can't y'all lean into it and take a victory lap?
I'm with you, brother. I don't know why it is considered such a bad thing to have that type of support. Now, I'll add this caveat. Some of the numbers that are being thrown out are wildly exaggerated. And I'm like, okay, well, hey, so it's just like, well, BYU's clearly they're just going to be the highest bidder and they've sold their souls and blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, like, we got to give some credit to the coaches and especially the basketball side, because people are like, well, the only reason the BYU is good in basketball is because they have more money. It's like, no, Kevin Young is the real deal. Guys want to play for Kevin Young. They want to play for his staff. Can we please be fair to a good coaching staff and situation here and an NBA boot camp, if you will? Yes, NIL is a significant part of this. But even AJ has said on record last week, I talked to him. If you want to go back and watch the interview, go back and talk. Go back and watch it. He says, BYU did not offer me the most. But that was not all. That's not what it is. I chose the system that I felt would best help get me ready for the NBA. Okay, those are his words. So, and I feel like that applies for a lot. Sometimes BYU might be the highest bidder. I'm all for it. Let's go. If they are the highest bidder, amazing resource that they have to be able to compete that way. So I agree with you. Lean into it, but I struggle a little bit with the fact that BYU just continues to pay more money than everybody else for every athlete ever. Like, that one is tough because that is not the case. Look, I know that it's an important part of the deal, but I do want to be fair to the staff and that they are creating a culture that is a place where players feel like they can get better. That is an element to this. And it's not just all about financial figures. Oh, he's just chasing the bag. He's just chasing the bag. You know what? Sometimes maybe players are. Good for them. And if BYU or any other school is offering it and that's their love language, great. But it is not just a straight it's always money. No, that is not the case. And I'd say the same thing about some players that go to Utah. Listen, Utah, in some cases, might be the highest bidder for some guys. but they're not the highest bidder for every guy. Guys that want to play for the Utes choose Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scally and some incredible coaches because they relate to them. And that's part of it. It's all a combination of things. But in general, like, I don't know why it's so like, no, we're not paying that. No, like sometimes BYU will be the highest bidder, but it's within the rules. Okay. And I do believe that tampering, how the definition of tampering, I feel like changes by the day. Like, I don't know what is considered tampering and what is not, and what's fair game. That's for the NCAA to figure out. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that Kalani Sitake and his staff and Kevin Young and his staff and BYU administrators want to play by the rules. It just so happens that NIL is now within the rules, and BYU's got a very wealthy support booster group and collective that want them to play ball. And so they're trying to do it within the rules. But hey, if it comes down to it and money is the signifying factor for a certain player to go to BYU over another place, then whatever. It is what it is. And that's fine, but it is not the end-all, be-all in all cases.
All right, my guy. Thanks for the time. Be good, and we'll do it again soon, okay?
Hey, appreciate you, brother. And I'll make ssure I send you the spelling for Tanu Vasa as soon as I get off the phone.
Love it. Love it. There he is. Spencer Litton, BYU TV, stops by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. Before we catch a break, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Call him at 801-424-DISH, and you can save a grip of money on a bunch of different things. What's going on, Ryan?
This is the time to call and save money. And, guys, the opportunity with this offer is so good. You get a huge amount of credits, movie channels. We'll set the price for the next 2 years, and it won't change. And, guys, this is going to be a lot less than what you're currently paying. And if you're cable or DirecTV or even YouTube, you'll be surprised because you're going to save money, and you're not going to see any more price increases because your price is set for the next 2 years, not to change. Call us up, take the upgrade. Biggest DVR out there, auto records your favorite games. Auto records all the local channels for you and actually will auto hop the commercials. Plus you get access to all the streaming apps built into the system. So you have one remote, runs everything for you. It puts everything kind of in one place and makes it simple and easy to use. Call us and take advantage of the deals. Plus ask about the gift card offers that we have that you may have received and you missed in the mail. We'll double check and make sure that if you qualify for any of those, we'll attach that on top of this fantastic offer. You will not get that if you call an 800 number. So call us. Call and get set up today. 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
IFA Country Stores has everything you need to care for your lawn, no matter its size or shape. Their 4+ lawn care program can promote healthy green grass this summer. Visit with their team of pro turf and landscape consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball, soccer fields, golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care they can share with you about your yard, only at IFA and online at ifa.coop. All right, coming up on the other side, the Utah Hockey Club lucked in to the number 4 overall pick. They had a 1.5% chance of moving up, and they did, 10 spots. We'll let you hear from Bill Armstrong about his plan to use that and potentially upgrade the roster. Coming up on the other side, we'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program and get you ready for some really fun NBA playoff action tonight. It is The Drive on a Tuesday. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. It's just Bill, right? All right, 5 o'clock out of the program tonight. We'll get back to some of the NBA storylines. The NBA playoffs last night brought us two instant classic games where both the Knicks and the Nuggets went on the road and grabbed game one of the series that's now in the second round. New York went up to Boston and stunned the Celtics, and the Nuggets just a soul-stealing win against OKC. We'll bring in Tim McMahon from ESPN, but what could be a historic day here locally went down yesterday during the 5 o'clock hour of the program as the Utah Hockey Club saw Lady Luck shine upon them in a way that it's never shined on the Utah Jazz. And for more on the potential of the number 4 overall pick coming up in the NHL draft, here's a couple of tidbits from the general manager of the Utah Hockey Club. It's Bill Armstrong.
To pick at 4, I mean, like we were just a couple seconds ago, we were just like 10 back. So it's like it still hasn't sunk in. But what a great opportunity for us to be able to move up that far in the draft, and now we're right up at the top of the draft. And this is an exciting moment for us. It's a game changer for us. So I can't wait to huddle with the scouts tomorrow and go over it and kind of see. You know, obviously we've been studying the players that were available to us where we thought they'd fall. Now we're going to, obviously leap up a little bit, and it's going to be exciting times. But, I mean, just great stuff for the franchise. I can't express in words on the excitement of when that happened and the opportunity in front of us.
Go to Belle Fraser, the Salt Lake Tribune.
Sorry, how does your mindset kind of change now that you have this pick, and what was going through your mind when you saw that ball?
Well, it was kind of all over the map because they didn't reveal things. So I thought we had won, but I wasn't quite sure. So when they tuned back in and showed us that we'd won. I mean, that's you just start thinking in a different. It's your mind just totally switches to like who's available that you can get at 4. So it's really exciting times for us. Puts us in a different area of the draft and right up top and. It's going to be a great challenge for us to kind of go back and look at some of the players that are available in that spot and go to work. We've had that ability to pick in the last few years up in that range. So I really do think it's good as a staff when you're always kind of picking in the same range. You get used to what's available and the talent around you. So it's truly exciting, and we're gonna get to work tomorrow and start preparing.
Go to Stephen Wino with the Associated Press.
Bill, you just mentioned sort of this is a game changer for you. Just very big picture, kind of what does this mean in terms of how exciting a summer you guys have ahead of you in terms of this free agency and everything else you guys might be able to do?
Well, I think it is. I mean, you look at the draft and you're like, to get into 4, you have to almost, be. It's a tough year as a franchise to go through that struggle just to be able to get into that range to pick at 4, and we didn't have to do that. We were a pretty good team that chased it down the stretch, playing meaningful games and chasing a playoff spot, and we're getting to that point where we're becoming a really good team that's going to have a chance to get into the playoffs. And so not only knowing that we have that in front of us with a really good team and some really good prospects coming, but the fact that we're picking at 4 again and going into free agency, these are exciting times for Utah.
Go to Brogan Houston with Deseret News.
Bill, congratulations. I'm just wondering how the process goes now, shifting gears from, probably anticipating the 14th overall pick, and now, all of a sudden you have this newfound ability to draft maybe a higher talent kind of thing. How does that process work, shifting your attention from one to the next?
Well, this is why you pay your amateur staff, right? Because now you're switching spots and you're having to draft higher. And they've been looking, coming down the stretch, they've been kind of seeing where we're going to place and chasing those type of players. Now it's, in motion, we're going to switch and go into a new world of looking at the top end of the draft and seeing what's going to slide our way at 4. The good news for us is that we've done it before. We've picked in that range in the last few years. So that's going to help us prepare for it. And I think the simple fact that our staff's pretty good at always keeping an eye on what's up there and has done some great work during the year. And now we're going to go dissect it and get down to business tomorrow.
Sam Farnsworth, KSL.
Yeah, hey, Bill, just to give us an idea, any given year in the NHL draft, what is the difference between a player in the skill set that's available at number 4 compared to number 10?
Yeah, or 10 or 14 where we were. Uh, it doesn't mean you can't pick somebody at 14 or 10 that's as good as that way you can pick at 4. You can. It depends on the strength of the draft and what's coming to you down the way. But right now, where we're picking at 4, there's some good talent there that's is definitely has shown itself, and we're really excited about getting to work and attacking that and see what might come our way. But there's really good players, obviously from 1 to all the way through. You can find players anywhere, so you just need to have a good strategy and a good staff.
Dana Green, ABC.
Congrats on the luck of the draw there. We kind of missed the first part of your comments. Can you just describe the shock that you had to move up 10 spots? That just doesn't happen.
Well, it never does. We sit at these things every year and we're just like, yeah. It's like we were in awe when we were here. We're like, oh my God, like what just happened to us? So it's just an amazing moment, and it really hasn't sunk in, to be honest with you. I think when we get down to doing some work tomorrow and looking at the lists and what we might be able to get, it's going to really get exciting for us. But it normally, you sit in these things and sometimes nobody moves and you go home, unhappy, or you got bumped down a spot and you're going home happy. But we'll never forget this moment. This is truly a great moment in the franchise.
Mike Morial, NHL.com.
Hey, Bill, thanks for doing this. Congrats. I know it might be a little early, but how do you and your staff feel about the top end of this draft and maybe the depth that's available?
Yeah. It's a good draft. I think it's, when you're picking up top, you got a chance to get a real game changer, a top 2-line guy that can be a difference maker on your team. You still have to pick well. If you go back to the 2012 draft, take a look at the top 4 that went off the board, and they all, never worked out for them in the NHL. So you still got to be a savvy staff that gets down to business and ignores all the critics, all the hype, and who's supposed to go and this and that, and really get down to it. So I think our staff's done an amazing job over the years at just kind of ignoring all the noise and getting down to hockey players. And you probably saw that the year that Cooley was picked. There was a lot of hype about a lot of different players, and we just stuck to our guns, and drafted what we thought was the best player in the draft.
Chase Beardsley, Hockey Writers.
Hey, Bill, congrats again on the pick, and hopefully your summer is going well. Originally you were supposed to pick around the 14th range, and around that time, it takes more time usually for a player to develop. And now that you're in top 4, it might take less time for that player to develop. Question is, does this change the timeline, in your opinion, of the rebuild? Does it advance it forward at all? Do your plans change at all in the future?
It does. It doesn't really change the rebuild. Our goal this year was to have a strong team that had a chance to get into the playoffs and that could compete, and at the same time go back into the draft with all our picks and swing. And so we have that ability to do that, and that was what we set out to do. And one pick's not going to change our franchise. Now there's a lot of higher quality talent that's up top, so we'll get a better look at it. Like I said, we'll have to get down to work and really kind of go through it tomorrow. But right now, we'll celebrate a little bit and get down to some work tomorrow.
Jake Hatch, KSL.
Yeah, Bill, philosophically, are you the guy who will go into a draft and look for the best player available regardless of position, or are there certain positions you'll be targeting?
Yeah, we really look at the best player available. We've always done that as a staff. Like I said, we kind of ignore all the hype and the noise around it, and all the bloggers and all the great things that they write about players and don't draft this guy. And our staff's really good about just digging into hockey players. And so that's our big thing. I think we've from the time I've come in, I've tried to hire some of the best scouts in the business and develop a culture. And create an organization that's obsessed with scouting. So this is where they'll make their money on picks like this. And so picking at 4 will give us an opportunity to get a real good player that will have some impact in the coming years into this franchise.
Belle Fraser.
Similar to Jake's question, just if there was a position or part of the team that could get some depth from this draft, what are you kind of looking at improving?
Well, we've had a lot of draft picks, Belle. So we've covered a lot of different areas for us. Like I said, it's just really comes down for the best player for us. We always keep track of how many D-men we've drafted every year, and obviously as you get down into the later rounds. But when we're picking up top, we're going to take the best player.
Final two questions. Tom Callahan, Locked On Utah.
Thank you, Bill. First, congratulations. And also wanted to ask you, I know you just got the shiny number 4 pick. Is there any consideration to maybe putting that pick in play for maybe some future mobility in the draft, free agency, maybe acquiring a player? And do you expect your phone to be ringing now that you're up at number 4?
I do. I think people will try and get into that pick. They'll try and get, they want to acquire it. They'll look at our team and say, listen, this team's had more picks in the last 4 years than any other NHL team. Can we go in there and give them a good player and for exchange for the pick? So I think that's something that obviously, we'll always talk about. We'll never shut that door. That's always been an avenue for us to get players, and we're at the position right now as a team where we're trying to make that next step. So we'll always look at that. That's part of the process. But the amateur guys will be looking at the guy to pick, and they don't want to hear anything about trades. So that'll be an exciting moment for us. But yes, the phone will be ringing.
Last question, Quentin Carney, Hockey News.
Hey, Bill. Just to kind of change gears, I was wondering, do you think Utah Hockey Club is going to try and make a big event of this for the whole Utah community, considering last year it was such a new team and people are still getting to know the team?
Yeah, I think so. I think they get more into the draft every year. So I think because we'll be picking, so high that, it'll cause a little bit of excitement in the community and into our fan base. I think they'll be really exciting to, they'll get into it. They just have to remember that it's not like basketball. The guy doesn't play right away. So I think that's the big difference we've tried to explain to people. It's like they go back to junior and sometimes they're 3 and even more years away from playing. So it takes a little bit longer. But I think last year when we drafted, a lot of the people thought, hey, they're coming in right away to play. And I'm like, no, it takes some time. So, but truly an incredible day for us here. And we're going to have the opportunity to pick a real good player high in the draft and take a big swing here. It's going to be exciting.
Big day, historic day yesterday, as the Utah Hockey Club had a 1.5% chance of moving up to 4. And you're telling me there's a chance. That's exactly what they did. A little bit of breaking news. Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and DeAndre Hunter are all out tonight for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Holy smokes. They might go down 2-0 to Indiana. We'll get to some NBA playoff storylines coming up in the 5 o'clock hour of the drive before we say goodnight at 6. But let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Professionals. Give him a call at 801-424-DISH, where you can save a bunch of money on a bunch of different things. Not really sure what else to say, Ryan. The time is yours.
Thanks, Spence, as always. That's just because we have a lot of products. And, one thing we've always focused on is TV. For sure, this is what we do. We offer a fantastic offer with Dish. We have access to additional promotions and offers. We have these tools that we're able to find things and get additional offers to add that you won't get when you call 800 numbers. So you always want to call us because we'll get you the best price, best equipment, have you installed as early as next day. Plus, we'll throw in dinner at JCW's on top of everything. Call us up today. Half a dozen different internet providers, prices from $35 to $50 a month. Listen, if you've got that cable bundle and you're 200, I've seen 300s and something all the time too. Listen, if you're paying that much, call us up and save yourself thousands. Truly that easy. Plus, we'll see if we can get an additional gift card attached to it and dinner at JCW's and have you installed as early as next day. Call us today, 424-DISH. It's 801-424-DISH.
All right, we got 3 hours down. We have 1 hour to go on this Tuesday afternoon, a historic night in the NBA last night, a couple of instant classic games. We'll see if we get some tonight. We'll get to some lottery stuff with the Jazz as we're high speed ahead, and we'll take you home during the 5 o'clock hour of the program. Coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, let's get it drive at 5 time, Tuesday afternoon style, 4 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. It has been unseasonably chilly for about 72 hours. The sun was shining a little bit earlier here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Looks like the temps will improve and get warmer throughout the course of the week, leading into a weekend of weather of 80-plus degrees. But as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass. We've had a busy show today. We got a busy 5 o'clock hour coming your way. And the 5 o'clock hour of the program today is brought to you by our friends at the Daybreak Home and Garden Show, which is May the 16th through the 18th at the Ballpark at America First Square. The address is 11111 Ballpark Drive in South Jordan. The website is thebesthomeshow.com. So listen up, homeowners. Spring is in the air. The birds are chirping and the flowers are blooming. Is your home and backyard sanctuary ready to enjoy the coming season? Go check out the new Daybreak Home and Garden Show coming to the Ballpark at America First Square, May the 16th through the 18th. This new show will have something for every member of the family. Vendors galore, home, garden, and patio. Free games for the kids, free day seminars, and hourly free prizes. Come tour the exciting new tiny home from Box House and tour the new Bees Ballpark. Get your tickets now. This will be the most exciting, fun, educational home show ever in Daybreak. Get tickets and information at thebesthomeshow.com, sponsored by our friends at Bullfrog Spas. All right, big news of the day today, at least locally, is yesterday the NHL Draft Lottery was held, and the Utah Hockey Club held a 1.5% chance of moving from 14 to 4, which is exactly what happened. So we are now 6 days away from the Utah Jazz having their turn and their chance to move up, hopefully in the NBA lottery. We'll find that out coming up next Monday night. Reminder, set your alarm and your alert for next Monday at 5 o'clock because we are your home of the NBA lottery in the market. You can hear it live if you don't have a chance to be at home in front of your television and you're driving around town making your commute home on a workday Monday. We will say goodnight a little bit early on Monday afternoon to make way for the NBA Draft Lottery. So just a reminder, the Utah Jazz were the worst team in pro basketball this year. It was the worst record in the history of the organization. And your reward, because we do live in this weird incentive structure in the NBA where they do incentivize you for being really bad. They incentivize you more for being really good, but more often than not, every year about 4 or 5 teams have a legitimate chance of winning the NBA championship. Where you don't want to be is in the middle, where the Jazz were for about a year and a half. So they finally make the commitment to going all in on doing this thing the long way and sometimes the hard way. They'll have a 14% chance of landing the number 1 overall pick, and they have a 52.1% chance of landing a top 4 pick. Now, they cannot fall out of the top 5. The Washington Wizards are your number 2 team. Very same odds. 14% for the number 1 pick, 52% for the for a top 4 pick. Number 3, Charlotte, very same odds. 14% number 1, 52% top 4. And then the odds get a little bit smaller for the remaining teams. The Pelicans are number 4. 12.5% chance at number 1, 48% chance at a top 4. Philly, ironically enough, after Joel Embiid was essentially put on the shelf and Paul George decided to podcast instead of play basketball, they're actually at number 5. They have a 10.5% chance of landing 1, a 42% chance of landing top 4. Then it's Brooklyn at 6. You're looking at Toronto at 7. How about San Antonio at 8? San Antonio with a 6% chance of landing the number 1 overall pick and a 26% chance of landing a top 4 pick. The Houston Rockets get the Phoenix Suns first-round pick as a result of a couple of different trades. And the Houston Rockets just made the postseason, and they had a great 7-game series against the Warriors. They have a 3.8% chance at number 1, a 17% chance at a top 4. Then it's Portland at 10, Dallas at 11, Chicago at 12, Atlanta via Sacramento at 13. And then San Antonio actually gets Atlanta's other pick. So San Antonio will have 2 lottery picks this year. So there you go. NBA Draft Lottery only 6 days away, and hoping that the Utah Jazz can receive the same lottery luck that the Utah Hockey Club received last night. NBA playoffs tonight. 1 game underway right now. The Pacers have an early 7-4 lead over the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if you missed the breaking news earlier, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and DeAndre Hunter are all out tonight for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are already in a 1-0 hole against the Indiana Pacers. Of course, the world of pro basketball buzzing as a result of what we saw last night, where the New York Knicks went up to the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, and absolutely snatched one away from Boston in overtime. 108-105 was your final score. Boston Celtics historically bad from the three-point line. As we've talked about throughout the show, last night was an L for the Goobs who cover basketball with calculators. Last night was an L for the analytic community. Now, to be fair, Boston has utilized their 5-out spacing offensive attack to lean into the three-point shooting model of the new numbers and the approach analytically of pro basketball to be historically good. And I still believe they're going to win the NBA championship. The one stat that stands out to me more than anything with the game last night is Boston went up 20 in the third quarter, and as soon as they went up 20, the next 10 possessions, they shot threes. 10 straight possessions, up 20, they're shooting threes. 9 of the 10 possessions, the ball did not even break the three-point line. They didn't even move it inside at all. And look, I get it. I understand that the modern-day approach where the Celtics have utilized allowed them to win a championship last year, and they have the personnel to do it more so than maybe any other team in all of pro basketball. And I'm of the belief that this model will lead them again to the NBA championship. But at some point, there has to be some nuance and context to your approach of the game with simply just numbers and calculators. And it just stands to reason when you're up 20 points with like 4 minutes left in the third against a team in the New York Knicks that are a little bit offensively challenged if Jalen isn't going, you got to change your approach. Boston gave that away as much as New York took it last night. Jason Tatum went 0 of 7 from the floor in the fourth quarter. He had 16 boards and 6 assists. He's taken a lot of heat today, and some of it's a little bit unfounded. But the New York Knicks really put the clamps on him in the fourth quarter, and Boston just relied on chucking up a bunch of threes while the New York Knicks were able to really execute at a high level to get Jalen Brunson in space. And after Kristaps Porzingis went down with an illness, it forced Joe Mazzulla to play Al Horford for 34 minutes at his advanced age and Luke Cornett a backup big 17 minutes. And what Tom Thibodeau elected to do is do everything he possibly could to get Jalen in switch situations where he was guarded by a Boston big. And when Porzingis is on the floor, it's a little bit different because he has the ability to be a little bit more mobile and agile than Al Horford. And if you can't get Jalen in the switches with Boston's bigs, you're in trouble. Because watching last night, they started out with Drew Holiday on Jalen. Then they went to Derek White. And every time the Knicks would try to run a perimeter pick-and-roll action to get Jalen in switches, the switches were Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. And the primary defender, either Drew Holiday or Derek White. And Drew Holiday is still one of the best perimeter defenders in all of pro basketball. And Derek White is a very capable defensive player as well. And the thing with Tatum and Brown is they're both 7 or 8 inches taller than Jalen. So it was tough sledding for Jalen early on, but the fourth quarter is when he was able to get into space. It was a great game from OG Anunoby, one of the best games he's played as a New York Knick. The Knicks elected to move off of R.J. Barrett, some other pieces to bring in OG Anunoby from Toronto, and then they sacrificed 5 of their future first-round picks, the most of their draft capital, to bring in Mikal Bridges. You add Josh Hart to the mix. Those are 3 perimeter defensive players that can at least make Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown uncomfortable. But the fact of the matter is that was a historic night for Boston on the wrong side of things where they missed 45 three-point shots. They missed 45 three-point shots. They went 15 of 60 from the floor. They out-rebounded the Knicks by 10. They had fewer turnovers than New York, actually by 1. And ultimately, that was a make-or-miss situation where the approach to the Boston Celtics was simply confusing. So we'll see if the Knicks can duplicate that performance to maybe grab Game 2 in Boston before that series goes back to MSG. In addition to the Knicks going on the road and grabbing Game 1 of the second-round series in their matchup, the Denver Nuggets went to Oklahoma City and just had a soul-snatching win against the Thunder. Oklahoma City essentially dominated and dictated the most of the flow of that game. Throughout the night, they had double-digit leads. They went up 16, and then from then on out, that was simply championship mettle and effort from the Denver Nuggets. Besides Michael Porter Jr., somebody remind him that it's actually the playoffs. But what Denver elected to do, and Coach Adelman, who's kind of new on the scene, by the way, now has more playoff victories than regular season victories. He pulled Michael Porter Jr. and he went with Westbrook. He went with Russell Westbrook down the stretch and a little bit of Peyton Watson. Michael Porter Jr. has all the talent you could want, but he just does not play hard enough when it comes to games like this. Of course, last night was really about the generational greatness of Nikola Jokic, who had 42 points, 22 rebounds, 6 assists. He becomes the 4th player all time to put up such a stat line, joining Wilt Chamberlain, Shaq, and Giannis. Obviously, down the stretch, what Mark, I referenced this earlier, last night was an L for the analytical community, folks that only believe you should analyze basketball with calculators. Mark Daigneault, coach of the year 2 years ago, and one of the bright young coaching minds in our league, in this league, in pro basketball, elected to start fouling the Denver Nuggets when OKC was up 3. Now, that is a strategy that I agree with, but not with 12 seconds left. If you're up 3 with 4 or 5 seconds left, it makes a lot more sense to foul, send the other team to the line, because then you only have to kill another 3 or 4 seconds. You don't have to kill another 10 or 11 seconds. Mark Daigneault put a lot of pressure on the Denver Nuggets to make free throws, but guess what they did? They made their free throws. But in doing so, he also placed, in my opinion, an unnecessary amount of pressure on his young team. Now, the only pushback that I have when it comes to Oklahoma City, not just coming out of the West, but maybe winning the whole thing, is they have not had a lot of playoff runs with a lot of experience. This is still a young team that has only won a couple of playoff rounds, and a year ago had a decent playoff run, but it didn't last that long. The Denver Nuggets haven't just won a championship. They've advanced to postseasons now with this group for 4, 5, 6 years, and they have the experience factor and the we are not afraid of the moment factor in a way that Oklahoma City doesn't have yet, because that's something you earn in this league. This is a rite of passage league. So Daigneault puts pressure on Denver to make their free throws, which they did. Jokic, Gordon, Murray, they make their free throws. But in doing so, he put even extra added pressure on some of his young players that have never been there before. Hence, Chet Holmgren stepping to the line, a really good free throw shooter, and blowing it, missing 2 free throws. Christian Brown gets the rebound. Smart play to push it up ahead to Westbrook. And Westbrook, I thought, as a former OKC Thunder, was going to go right to the tin to try to win it himself. But he makes the smart basketball play. He finds Aaron Gordon on the wing and a wide open shot. And credit Aaron Gordon for knocking down a massive shot and hitting his second game winner for the Nuggets during this playoff run. I think Boston still beats the Knicks in probably 5 or 6 games. I thought last night for New York was like finding a $20 bill in your back pocket while you were doing laundry. It was found money. But if I'm Oklahoma City, I'm a little bit concerned that maybe my lack of experience and veteran presence and never having a long playoff run together will end at the hands of the best player in the world right now, Nikola Jokic, and a Denver Nugget team that won a championship just a couple of years ago. Tim McMahon was on the sidelines, and he was on the scenes. We'll see what he saw from his seat, and we'll also talk. up to number 4, and that's exactly what happened. In 6 days, we will find out the situation for the Utah Jazz. So exciting stuff there. NBA playoff action. Man, the playoffs have been good. Ratings are through the roof, actually. So for people like me that believe the NBA has an issue when it comes to load management and regular season sandbagging and such, the playoffs usually remind you of how great this game is and the sport is when the best players in the world decide that they care about playing basketball. So hopefully we'll get a couple of good games tonight. We have the Pacers and the Cavs going right now. The Cavs are without some of their main pieces. They need Darius Garland in the series. Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter sitting, so Donovan's going to have to make miracles happen for them to win. And then we get a little rematch with Rudy Gobert and Draymond Green. You never know if a game is going to end in a headlock and such. So NBA playoffs tonight. On the NHL side of things, the Stanley Cup playoffs continue on. That's also been a really, really fun tournament to watch. We've got the Hurricanes and the Caps tonight. Of course, Alexander Ovechkin, the all-time leading goal scorer in pro hockey. Then the Oilers and the Golden Knights get started tonight in T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It's the second round, game 1. That action could be seen on ESPN. The NBA action can be seen on Turner. Porter, I know that you're a big fan of LeBron James. I
am. A stan, if you will.
You can be a LeBron stan, and that's fine. And as I've said, I'm not a LeBron hater. Why do you think he needs attention as badly as he does?
I don't think he knows different, maybe.
You know what? You might be right. Because from my vantage point, it's always easy to be like, hey, if I was LeBron. Right. I just wouldn't want any more attention than I already have. Like, he has to tweet out that he's missing the Met Gala because of his leg injury.
Right.
Like, I know you're not playing. But it's the same thing. Like the day after the Lakers are eliminated, Dave McMenamin, friend of the show, LeBron tells him that he sprained his MCL, and then we've got to talk about that. Then he gives his postseason presser. He's like, yeah, well, I've got the player option. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. We do the song and dance every offseason. Maybe to your point, he doesn't know any different. I just don't know why a guy like that would want any more attention than he already gets organically.
Like you, I would be trying to, bring the attention down if I were anywhere near that kind of level of celebrity or success, whatever it may be. But yeah, I mean, I think there's probably something to being this since you're 14 years old, right? There's probably not much escaping that in your cranium, right? So there's something to that. I also think there's a little bit of a power play thing where LeBron makes even if it isn't doesn't put him in a great light, right? It seems like needy or feely. He also puts out his feelings as a power play sometimes. I very much think, he's not telling the Lakers he's not coming out and doing the press conference and talking about his contract situation for no reason outside of attention. I think there's also a little bit like, hey, I am LeBron. You guys answer to what I decide this offseason. And there's always some of that there. But like you, it's the one thing about Braun that I could do without. I'm a fan of the basketball stuff.
And by the way, you can go to the Met Gala if you have a sprained MCL.
You can go to the Met Gala on one leg. You can go to the Met Gala with one leg.
You could. I'm sure there's somebody there that doesn't have use of both their legs. Like,
there
if he wanted to go to the Met Gala, he could go to the Met Gala.
You're not wrong.
And his tweet was like, everybody's asking me. Nobody's asking about you attending the Met Gala, LeBron. Like, there's a little Trumpish in there. Like, everybody's saying.
Yeah, everybody's asking about it.
Just ridiculous. Anyway, man, the playoffs have been fun. You been enjoying this playoff basketball?
Just to play devil's advocate.
Oh, no.
He was like a chairman. Like, there was a sports Met Gala theme going on where there was like an F1 driver. There was like a Lewis Hamilton was there. He was actually supposed to be there. It wasn't just like a guest thing, but I digress. I agree with you.
Are you enjoying the playoff basketball?
So much.
It's been fun.
It's been amazing. And then last night, it just the ante was upped a little bit.
It was indeed. So we'll see what tonight brings us. Porter, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the radio show?
Halfway through the work week, we will talk about that. NBA, Jazz, whatever comes about with one Tony Jones of The Athletic. We'll discuss the Utah Hockey Club moving up to the number 4th pick in the NHL draft. It is Behind the Glass with our guy Neil Smith. Chris Comrani in studio for an entire hour with you out Friday. CK will be in on a Wednesday. And then Andy Larson stops by to finish off the show. Of course, catching up with Andy on all things Jazz off-season, NBA draft lottery, and a little bit of playoffs. And, hey, some RSL probably as well.
There we go. It'll be a fun Wednesday show. We'll get you halfway through that work week and one day closer to your weekend. We will say goodnight for this Tuesday edition, and a special thank you to JB Long, Tim McMahon, Spencer Linton, and for any of the sound you may have missed from the show, you go to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's the way I listen to our station. It's very easy. It's very clear. The ESPN 700 app is available for free in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space, specifically for 4 hours every afternoon, please support our podcast page. We ask you to do that because if you do, it actually helps us out. Wherever you get your shows, subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars that they allow, and it does help us out. For Porter, I'm Spence.